In the shadow of St. Augustine's Abbey in 1190, you stand at the gatehouse, a monk bound by the Rule of Saint Benedict, handing bread to a shivering crowd of widows and orphans. Each loaf is a prayer, each bowl of pottage a testament to charity. But as the desperate press forward, testing your patience and strength, can you uphold the rule's call to serve all as Christ? Discover the untold story of monks whose tireless almsgiving fed a starving medieval world, and the hidden toll it took on their cloistered souls. The daily grind in a Benedictine monastery. Imagine yourself awakening in the dim pre-dawn hours, the chill of stone floors seeping through your thin straw mattress. This is the world of a Benedictine monk in the 12th century, where every day unfolds with the precision of a well-worn prayer book. The Rule of Saint Benedict, penned in the 6th century by the Italian monk himself, governs your every action, a blueprint for communal living that emphasizes stability, obedience, and ceaseless labor. As you rise at the sound of the bell for matins, the first of 8 daily offices, you join your brothers in the darkened church, chanting psalms in Latin that echo off vaulted ceilings. The air is thick with the scent of damp wool and incense, a constant reminder of your separation from the bustling villages beyond the monastery walls. Your day begins not with leisure, but with ora et labora prayer, and work the twin pillars of Benedictine life. After matins, you shuffle to lauds at dawn, your voice hoarse from the cold, reciting verses that praise the rising sun, even as clouds often obscure it in the misty English or French countryside. Breakfast is sparse, a hunk of coarse barley bread, and perhaps a sip of watered ale, eaten in silence, while a brother reads from Scripture. No idle chatter disrupts this meal. The rule forbids it, insisting that words be few and weighed carefully. You learn quickly that silence is not merely an absence of sound, but a discipline that sharpens the mind toward contemplation, though it often breeds a profound loneliness amid the company of dozens. By mid-morning, labor calls. In the scriptorium, you might hunch over a parchment, quill in hand, copying ancient texts by the flicker of tallow candles that sting your eyes and blacken your fingers with ink. The work is meticulous siege letter, formed with deliberate strokes, errors scraped away with a knife, only to begin anew. These manuscripts preserve knowledge from classical antiquity, Aristotle's philosophies, Virgil's epics, or the writings of church fathers like Augustine. Yet the task is grueling. Your back aches from the wooden bench, and the winter drafts make your hands numb, leading to smudged lines that demand repetition. Outside, if assigned to the fields, you till soil with crude tools, planting turnips, or harvesting wheat under a relentless sun or driving rain. The monastery must be self-sufficient, so you mend fences, tend beehives for wax and honey, or brew ale in vast copper vats, the steam rising like a fog over your sweat-dampened habit. Amid this routine, small acts of resilience emerge. You adapt to the rule's demand for humility, sharing tools without complaint, even as rivalries simmer beneath the surface, perhaps over a warmer spot in the dormitory or a slightly larger portion at mealtime. Historical records from places like the Abbey of St. Gall in Switzerland detail how monks engineered water systems, channeling streams for mills and latrines, turning necessity into ingenuity. Yet, These innovations stem from survival, not ambition. A broken aqueduct means spoiled food or disease, as dysentery often sweeps through the cloisters due to poor sanitation. As noon approaches, the bell tolls for sext, another round of prayers interrupting your toil. You kneel on the hard floor, your knees calloused from repetition, pondering the psalm's promises of eternal reward amid earthly discomfort. The afternoon brings more work, perhaps laundering linens in icy streams or repairing the thatched roof against leaks that drip incessantly during storms. Supper, mirrors, breakfast, more bread, maybe lentils or cheese on feast days, consumed with the same enforced quiet. Vespers and compline follow, sealing the day in prayer before you collapse onto your pallet. The cycle poised to repeat, but as you lie there in the communal dormitory, listening to the snores of your brethren, a question lingers in the silence. How does this unyielding routine, day after day, forge not just manuscripts and meals, but the very souls of men who chosen for this path? What hidden strains might build beneath such stoic endurance? You return to the rhythm of the Benedictine monastery, where the bell's toll pulls you from sleep to prayer, from labor to prayer, in a cycle as relentless as the seasons. The Rule of Saint Benedict, which you've come to know as both guide and chain, demands not just your time, but your entire being. By now, you've memorized the Psalms chanted during the divine office matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, and compline, each marking a moment to pause and offer your thoughts to God. These 8 daily services, spread across day and night, consume hours, leaving your voice raw and your mind tethered to Latin verses. The church, with its cold stone walls and flickering candles, becomes as familiar as your own heartbeat, yet its sanctity feels distant when your stomach growls or your bones ache from kneeling. Labor fills the gaps between prayers, and it's here, in the mundane tasks, that you glimpse the monastery's deeper purpose. The rule emphasizes self-sufficiency, so you and your brothers cultivate fields, tend orchards, or maintain the cloister's infrastructure. Historical accounts, like those from the Abbey of Cluny in France, describe monks managing vast estates gifted by nobles seeking divine favor. You might find yourself hauling timber to repair a barn or grinding grain into flour. The mills creak, a steady counterpoint to the silence of your vows. These tasks aren't glamorous. They're repetitive, backbreaking, and often filthy. In summer, sweat soaks your woolen habit, while winter leaves your fingers cracked and bleeding from frost. Yet, there's a quiet pride in the work. A well-tended garden means survival through lean months, and a sturdy roof shelters the community from storms that batter the countryside. The monastery's scriptorium offers no reprieve. If assigned there, you sit for hours, copying texts with precision that borders on obsession. A single mistake, a smudged letter, or misplaced accent could render a page useless, as monks at places like Monte Cassino learned when preserving classical works. The ink stains your hands, and the dim light strains your eyes. Yet these manuscripts are the monastery's legacy, safeguarding knowledge for future generations. You might copy a medical treatise by Galen or a commentary by Bede, each page a bridge between antiquity and the medieval world. The labor is solitary, but you're never alone. The rule forbids idleness, and a senior monk often supervises, his gaze sharp for signs of distraction or defiance. Human connections, though muted, shape this life. The rule demands obedience, but you notice subtle rebellions, a whispered complaint. During fieldwork, a stolen glance; during silent meals, historical records, such as the Chronicles of Orderic Vitalis, revealed tensions. Monks who grumbled over meager rations or resented the abbot's strictness. You share a dormitory with dozens, sleeping on narrow pallets under coarse blankets. And though you're bound by community, isolation creeps in. Friendships form, but they're restrained. The rule discourages particular attachments, urging you to love all brothers equally. Still, you find comfort in small gestures, shared nod during vespers, a brother passing you an extra turnip at supper. As the day closes with Conklin, you chant the final psalms, your voice blending with others in the candlelit church. The words promise peace, but your mind wanders to the weight of this life. The monastery is a refuge from the chaos of feudal wars, yet it imposes its own burdens. You wonder, what drives a man to endure such austerity, and what might happen if that endurance frays under the strain of unceasing routine? As you settle into the rhythm of the Benedictine monastery, the unyielding cycle of prayer and work becomes your world, a grind that shapes both body and soul. The Rule of Saint Benedict, your constant guide, has molded you into a cog in the monastery's machine, where individual desires dissolve into collective purpose. By now, you've internalized the 8 daily offices, from the pre-dawn matins to the final compline, each a checkpoint in a day that feels both eternal and fleeting. The church's stone walls, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, bear witness to your chants, but they also echo the silent struggles of those who came before you. The monastery, like those at St. Gall or Cluny, stands as a testament to endurance. Its very existence, a defiance of the chaos beyond feudal wars, famines, and plagues that threaten the fragile order of medieval Europe. Your labor, whether in the fields or scriptorium, is the monastery's lifeblood. You've learned to coax crops from stubborn soil, planting barley or beans to sustain the community through winter. Historical records, such as the Doomsday Book, note how monasteries managed vast lands, their harvests feeding not just monks, but local villagers during lean times. In the scriptorium, your quill scratches out sacred texts or chronicles, preserving knowledge that might otherwise vanish. A single manuscript, like those produced at Wearmouth Jarrow, could take months. Each page, a labor of precision under the watchful eye of the abbot. Mistakes are costly, parchment is scarce, made from animal hides that require weeks of preparation. Yet these texts, from scripture to agricultural manuals, are the monastery's gift to posterity, a quiet victory over oblivion. But victory comes at a cost. The rule's demand for obedience and humility frays the spirit. You've seen brothers falter, some succumb to despair, others to subtle defiance. Chronicles from the period, like those of Matthew Paris, recount monks who fled, unable to bear the isolation or hunger. You, too, feel the weight, the endless silence, broken only by bells and psalms, the coarse bread that never quite fills you, the cold that seeps into your bones during winter vigils. Yet resilience emerges in small ways. You share a knowing glance with a brother during a long night office, or you find solace in the rhythm of hoeing a field, the earth yielding under your effort. These moments, however fleeting, stitch the community together. A tapestry of shared hardship. As the years pass, the monastery's purpose crystallizes. It's not just a refuge, but a bulwark, preserving faith and knowledge amid a world of uncertainty. The manuscripts you copy influence theologians and kings. The grain you harvest feeds the poor during famines. Your life, though monotonous, ripples outward, shaping medieval society in ways you'll never see. Reflecting on this, you realize the paradox. The boring grind of monastic life fits repetitive prayers. Its laborious tasks laid the foundation for cultural survival. Today, we owe libraries of ancient texts and the roots of modern agriculture to these cloistered men whose quiet persistence outlasted empires. But as you lie on your straw pallet, the night silent, save for distant snores, a final thought lingers. What did it cost these monks, not just in body, but in the dreams they left behind for this unyielding devotion? Harsh winters at Cluny Abbey. Picture yourself standing at the gates of Cluny Abbey in the heart of Burgundy, France, during the bitter winter of 1080. The wind howls across the snow-dusted hills, biting through your woolen habit as you, a monk of this renowned Benedictine house, brace for another season of unrelenting cold. Cluny, founded in 910, is no ordinary monastery. It's a spiritual powerhouse, its influence stretching across Europe, overseeing hundreds of daughter houses. Yet, winter strips away its grandeur, leaving you to face the raw struggle of survival. The stone walls of the abbey, though majestic, offer little warmth, their surfaces slick with frost. Your breath clouds in the air as you trudge toward the church for lauds, the second of the day's 8 prayer services. Your sandals crunching on frozen ground, the rule of Saint Benedict governs your life, dictating a rhythm of prayer, work, and study. But winter at Cluny tests this discipline to its limits. Historical records, like those from the Abbey's chronicles, describe winters so severe that ink froze in the scriptorium and crops failed, leaving the monastery's stores dangerously low. Breakfast is a meager affair, a crust of rye bread, sometimes hardened by frost, and a cup of watered wine, consumed in the refectory's dim light, while a brother reads from the lives of saints. Silence is mandatory, but the clatter of wooden spoons betrays the hunger you all share. The rule's call for moderation feels like a cruel jest when your stomach knots with cold and want. Your morning tasks shift with the season. The fields lie fallow, so you're assigned to indoor labors, repairing worn habits with coarse thread or tending the fire in the warming room. A rare luxury permitted only for the sick or elderly. Wood is scarce. You haul logs from dwindling stores, each trip through the snow leaving you shivering. In the scriptorium, copying manuscripts becomes a battle against numb fingers and fading light. As candles are rationed to preserve wax, you might transcribe a psalm or a letter from Abbot Hugh, Cluny's revered leader, whose reforms have made the abbey a beacon of monastic rigor. Yet, the cold seeps into your bones, and the parchment curls in the damp air, threatening your work. Survival demands ingenuity. You and your brothers reinforce the dormitory's walls with straw to block drafts, and you learn to layer scraps of cloth beneath your habit for warmth. The Abbey's kitchen, a hub of activity, churns out thin vegetable broths as meat is rare and reserved for feast days. Historical accounts note Cluny's role in aiding local peasants during harsh winters, sharing what little grain remains, a gesture of charity that strains the Abbey's resources. You feel the weight of this balance. The rule demands hospitality, but survival hinges on frugality. As you kneel for sext, the midday prayers, the church's vastness feels oppressive, its high vaults echoing with the wind's moan. Your thoughts drift to the months ahead when snow might block the roads, cutting off supplies. The chronicles speak of monks enduring such winters through faith and discipline, but you sense a fragility beneath the Abbey's strength. What happens when the cold deepens and the stores dwindle further? How does a community bound by vows of stability face the specter of scarcity? The winter at Cluny Abbey grows fiercer, and you feel its grip tightening with each passing day. The Rule of Saint Benedict, your anchor, insists on perseverance, but the cold tests your resolve. By January, the snow piles high against the Abbey's walls, and the San River, usually a lifeline for trade, freezes over, halting deliveries of grain or firewood. You rise for matins at midnight, the church so cold that your breath forms fleeting clouds in the candlelight. The psalms you chant praises of divine protection feel distant as your fingers stiffen and your voice cracks in the frigid air. Historical records from Cluny's archives describe winters when monks burned old furniture to stay warm, a desperate act that speaks to the season's brutality. Your days revolve around survival. The rules call for ora et and workadapts to winter's demands. You might be tasked with clearing snow from the cloisters' walkways, a Sisyphean effort as fresh flakes fall. The work is grueling. Your hands blister beneath thin gloves, and the damp seeps into your boots. In the kitchen, you help prepare soups from shriveled turnips and dried herbs, the aroma a faint promise of warmth. Cluny's wealth, built on donations from nobles, allows some provisions, barrels of salted fish or sacks of barley, but these are stretched thin. The Abbey's chronicles note years when famine loomed, forcing monks to ration even their sparse meals. A single bowl of gruel replacing the usual bread and broth. Community binds you, yet frays under strain. The rule forbids murmuring, but you overhear whispers of discontent, brothers grumbling over smaller portions, or the abbot's decision to share food with starving villagers. You share a dormitory with dozens, the air heavy with the scent of unwashed wool and damp straw. Sleep is fitful. The cold keeps you awake, and the rule's prohibition on extra blankets means you huddle beneath a single coarse cover. Yet, moments of resilience shine through. A brother might slip you a charred onion saved from the fire, or share a prayer to ease the tension. Historical accounts, like those of Peter the Venerable, Cluny's later abbot, praise the monks' charity, noting how they opened the Abbey's gates to refugees despite their own want. In the scriptorium, work slows. The cold makes ink congeal, and candles burn too quickly to justify long hours. You copy charters or liturgical texts, each stroke a battle against shivering hands. These documents, preserved in Cluny's library, record the Abbey's role in mediating disputes between feudal lords, a reminder of its influence. But influence means little when your stomach growls during Vespers and the candles flicker out before you learn to hoard warmth, lingering near the kitchen's hearth when permitted, or pressing closer to your brothers during prayers. Their body heat a small comfort as you trudge to the dormitory, the snow still falling. You reflect on Cluny's paradox. It's a center of spiritual and political power, yet winter reduces it to a fragile outpost, its survival hinging on discipline and sacrifice. The rule promises eternal reward, but the immediate challenge is earthly. How do you and your brothers endure when the cold threatens not just comfort, but life itself? What cracks might appear in this community when hunger and frost push beyond endurance? Winter at Cluny Abbey reaches its cruel peak, and you feel the monastery teetering on the edge of survival. The Rule of Saint Benedict, your guiding star, demands unwavering commitment to prayer and community, but the relentless cold and dwindling supplies test this resolve. By February, the Abbey's stores are nearly depleted, barrels of grain scraped to their bottoms, and the last of the salted fish gone. Historical chronicles, such as those by Orderic Vitalis, recount winters when Cluny's monks faced starvation, their prayers punctuated by hunger pangs. You join your brothers for lauds, the church's vast nave, a cavern of ice, where even the sacred relics on the altar seem to shiver in their reliquaries. Your work now is a desperate scramble. The rule's call for self-sufficiency drives you to scour the Abbey's grounds for anything edible, frozen berries in the orchard or roots buried under snow. You chop wood from nearby forests, each swing of the axe a battle against exhaustion, as firewood is rationed to keep only the infirmary and church lit. In the kitchen, you help boil broth from bones saved from Michaelmas, the feast's memory, a cruel contrast to your current hunger. Cluny's role as a regional benefactor, documented in its records, means sharing these scraps with desperate villagers, a duty that stretches the Abbey's resources to breaking. You marvel at the monks' resilience, their willingness to give, despite their own need, a testament to the rule's emphasis on charity. The community, though bound by vows, shows its human seams. The rule forbids discord, but hunger breeds tension. You witness a brother hoarding bread, his shame palpable when caught. Another snaps during Compline, his whispered curse echoing in the silent church. Yet, these moments are outweighed by acts of quiet heroism. A senior monk shares his cloak with a novice shivering during matins. Another forgoes his portion to feed a sick brother. The chronicles of Cluny praise such sacrifices, noting how the Abbey's survival hinged on collective endurance. You, too, find strength in routine kneeling for prayers, even when weak, or hauling snow to melt for drinking water, each act a defiance of despair. Spring's promise looms, but it's distant. The Abbey's influence, its network of monasteries across Europe, offers no immediate relief when roads are snowbound. You reflect on Cluny's legacy, its manuscripts, its reforms, its role in shaping medieval Christendom. These achievements, preserved in libraries like those at Dijon, were born from winters like this, where survival demanded not just faith, but ingenuity. The monks disciplined praying through hunger, working through cold ensured Cluny's endurance, its walls standing when empires crumbled. As you collapse onto your pallet, the dormitories chill, unbroken by a dying fire. You ponder the cost of this life. The boring grind of winter at Clunia's endless tasks, its sparse meals forged a resilience that echoes today. Modern institutions, from universities to archives, owe their roots to these monks who preserved knowledge and charity through hardship. But lying in the dark, you wonder, what dreams did these men sacrifice to keep the Abbey's fires burning? How did their quiet suffering shape not just Cluny, but the world beyond its walls? Asterisk, scribal duties, copying manuscripts by candlelight step into the dimly lit scriptorium of a 10th century Benedictine monastery, perhaps at the Abbey of Fleury in France, where you, a monk, sit hunched over a wooden desk, quill in hand, surrounded by the faint glow of tallow candles. It's 975, and your task is to copy manuscripts, a labor that defines monastic life as much as prayer. The Rule of Saint Benedict, your guiding text, calls this work labora, sacred duty, to preserve knowledge through meticulous transcription. The air smells of wax, ink, and damp parchment, and the only sound is the scratch of quills and the occasional cough of a brother battling the autumn chill. Your desk is strewn with tools, a knife to sharpen your quill, a pumice stone to smooth parchment, and an inkhorn filled with a mixture of oak gall and iron salts. Each manuscript is a treasure. Whether it's a copy of Boethius's Consolation, of philosophy, a gospel book, or a chronicle of local saints. Historical records from Fleury and other monasteries, like those at Bobbio, show monks preserving texts from antiquity works by Cicero, Augustine, or medical treatises by Hippocrates. Your task is daunting. A single page might take hours, each letter formed with care to avoid errors, as parchment is costly, made from animal hides soaked, scraped, and stretched over weeks. You dip your quill, the ink cold against your fingers, and begin tracing letters in the Carolingian minuscule, a clear script developed under Charlemagne's reforms to standardize writing across Europe. The scriptorium is no haven. The candles, made from animal fat, sputter and smoke, stinging your eyes and staining your fingers with soot. Daylight is scarce, as narrow windows let in little of the gray autumn sky, and candles are rationed to save resources. Your back aches from hours bent over the desk, and your hands cramp from the repetitive strokes. Errors are a monk's nightmare. A smudged letter means scraping the parchment, risking a tear, or starting anew. The rule demands precision, and the abbot, or librarius, the monk overseeing the scriptorium, watches closely, correcting mistakes with a sharp word. Chronicles from the period, like those of Adso of Montierander, describe monks laboring under such scrutiny, their work a blend of devotion and drudgery. Yet, this labor is vital. Your manuscripts will outlast you, carrying knowledge to future generations. Monasteries, like Fleury, were intellectual hubs, their scriptoria, saving classical texts from oblivion during the early medieval period. You take pride in this, though the monotony wears on you. The silence of the scriptorium, broken only by the rustle of parchment, mirrors the rule's call for contemplation, but also breeds isolation. You glance at your brothers, each absorbed in their own folios, and wonder about their thoughts, their pasts, novices, former farmers, or noble sons, all bound by the same vows. As you pause to trim your quill, the candle's flame flickers, casting shadows across the page. You've completed half a psalm, but the day's work is far from done. The weight of this task, preserving words for eternity, feels both noble and crushing. What toll does this relentless precision take on a monk's spirit? How does one endure the solitude of this sacred, silent work? The scriptorium at Fleury Abbey remains your world, a place where time seems suspended in the flicker of candlelight and the endless scratch of quills. As a monk in 975, you've grown accustomed to the rhythm of copying manuscripts, a task that blends reverence with exhaustion. The Rule of Saint Benedict shapes every hour, urging you to see this labor as an offering, yet the physical and mental strain is undeniable. By now, you've mastered the Carolingian minuscule, your letters flowing with a clarity that makes texts legible across Christendom. But mastery doesn't ease the discomfort. The scriptorium's stone walls radiate cold, and the tallow candles, burning low to conserve wax, cast a dim glow that forces you to squint, your eyes burning by midday. Your current task is copying a commentary by Gregory the Great, a dense theological text destined for a sister monastery. Each page demands focus. A single misplaced stroke could alter a word's meaning, a grave error when transcribing sacred works. Historical records, like those from the Annals of Fulda, highlight the scriptorium's role in preserving such texts, which shaped medieval theology and law. You work slowly, consulting the Exemplora master copy, while battling distractions, a draft chilling your hands, the faint rumble of your stomach after a breakfast of barley bread. The rule forbids idle talk, so the scriptorium hums with silence, broken only by the creak of benches or a brother's stifled yawn. The materials themselves are a challenge. Parchment, made from calf or sheepskin, is prone to flaws, holes from insect bites, or uneven patches that snag your quill. Ink, brewed from oak galls and vinegar, clumps in the cold, forcing you to warm it near a candle, risking drips. You've learned to stretch resources, reusing scraped parchments, called palimpsests. As noted in records from monasteries like St. Gall, mistakes haunt you. Yesterday, you miswrote a verse, earning a reprimand from the librarius, who reminded you that these texts are God's word, not to be marred by carelessness. The pressure is immense, and you feel it in your stiffened shoulders and throbbing temples. Despite the hardship, there's a quiet pride in your work. Your manuscripts will travel perhaps to a cathedral school in Reims or a noble's library, spreading knowledge in an age of uncertainty. You've heard tales of monks at Fleury who illuminated manuscripts with gold leaf or colored inks, though such luxuries are rare here. Your own pages are plain, but they carry weight, a prayer book for a pilgrim, a chronicle for a king. Yet the isolation gnaws at you. The rule discourages personal bonds, but you catch fleeting moments of camaraderie, brother passing you, a sharper quill, a shared grimace when the candles gutter out. These small acts, unrecorded in any chronicle, sustain you. As you pause to stretch aching fingers, the scriptorium darkens, a storm cloud dimming the meager light. You've finished another page, but the commentary stretches on, and your candle is nearly spent. The weight of this labor, its precision, its solitude, presses harder. How does a monk balance devotion to this sacred task with the human need for rest, for connection? What happens when the candles burn out and the work remains unfinished? In the scriptorium of Fleury Abbey, the winter of 975 deepens, and your work copying manuscripts feels like a race against fading light and dwindling resources. The Rule of Saint Benedict binds you to this task, framing it as a sacred act, but the toll of endless hours at the desk is undeniable. The Carolingian minuscule flows from your quill, but your hands tremble from cold, and your eyes strain against the weak flicker of tallow candles. Historical records, like those preserved at Fleury, challenges multiply. Candles are now strictly rationed, forcing you to work in near darkness by late afternoon. The ink freezes in its horn, and you warm it with your breath, risking smudges that could ruin a day's work. Parchment shortages mean you must use every inch, even flawed sheets with tears or stains. Chronicles from the period, such as those by Richer of Reims, describe monks reusing palimpsests, scraping old texts to make room for new ones. Practical, but heartbreaking act when it erases a rare classical work. You've made errors, too, corrected with a knife, but each mistake feels like a personal failure under the librarius's stern gaze. Community, though restrained by the rule, offers solace. You notice a brother slipping you an extra candle stub, a silent act of kindness that lets you finish a page. Another shares a trick for warming ink without spilling, learned from years at the desk. These moments, unrecorded but vital, echo the resilience found in monastic annals, which praise Fleury's monks for their steadfastness amid scarcity. Yet tensions simmer. A novice grumbles about the cold, earning a sharp rebuke, and you feel the strain of silence the rules demand. For detachment clashing with your need for human warmth, your work's impact dawns on you as you near the manuscript's end. This commentary will guide priests, shape sermons, and influence distant courts, as Fleury's scriptorium was known to do. Your pages, though plain, are threads in a vast tapestry of knowledge, linking antiquity to the future. But completion brings no fanfare. You bind the folios, store them in the Abbey's library, and begin another text. The cycle is relentless. Yet it's this grind that preserved works we still study to dates that fueled the Carolingian Renaissance and beyond. Modern libraries owe their foundations to your cramped hands and bleary eyes. As you extinguish your final candle, the scriptorium now dark, you reflect on this paradox. The boring labor of copying, its repetitive strokes, its silent hours built a legacy that outlasted kingdoms. But at what cost? The monks of Fleury, hunched over their desks, sacrificed comfort, sight, and years to this task. Lying on your pallet, the cold seeping through straw, you wonder, what dreams did these scribes set aside to preserve the words of others? How did their silent, flickering work shape a world they'd never see? The Rule of Saint Benedict. Obedience and austerity. Imagine yourself entering the gates of a Benedictine monastery in southern Italy, perhaps Monte Cassino, in the year 1050. You are a novice, newly vowed to a life shaped by the Rule of Saint Benedict, a 6th century text that governs every aspect of your existence. The monastery, perched on a rocky hill, stands as a fortress of faith, its stone walls shielding you from the chaotic world of feudal lords and bandit raids. Yet, as you step into the cloister, you feel the weight of the rule's demands: obedience, austerity, and a life stripped of personal ambition. The air smells of earth and incense, and the distant toll of a bell calls you to prime. The morning prayer, where you join your brothers in chanting psalms under the watchful eye of the abbot. The Rule, written by Benedict of Nursia, is a meticulous guide prescribing not just spiritual duties, but the rhythm of daily life. You rise at dawn, your straw pallet offering little comfort, and begin the cycle of 8 prayer services: matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, and compline. Historical records, like those from Monte Cassino's chronicles, describe how the rule's structure brought order to monasteries across Europe. Your meals are sparse: a loaf of coarse bread, a bowl of lentils, and water, eaten in silence while a brother reads scripture. The rule forbids excess, so even on feast days, your portion barely sats hunger, teaching you to find sustenance in discipline rather than food. Obedience is the rule's cornerstone. You vow to obey the abbot as if he were Christ, a promise that feels both sacred and suffocating. Your day is divided between prayer and labor, perhaps tending the monasteries, vineyard, or cleaning the refectories' stone floors. Each task, no matter how menial, is an act of submission, as the rule insists that work glorifies God. Chronicles from the period, such as those by Peter Damian, note how monks at Monte Cassino rebuilt their abbey after Saracen raids, their obedience fueling resilience. Yet, you feel the strain. Every action, from folding your habit to kneeling for prayer, is scrutinized, and hesitation invites correction, perhaps a public rebuke or extra hours of penance. Austerity defines your surroundings. Your habit is rough wool, patched and scratchy, and the dormitory is a shared space of hard pallets and thin blankets. The rule forbids personal possessions, so you own nothing beyond your faith and your labor. This simplicity, meant to free you from worldly distraction, breeds a stark loneliness. You notice your brother's small acts of endurance, sharing a tool without complaint, or bowing to the abbot's sharp words with grace. These moments, though unrecorded, bind the community. Echoing the rule's call for mutual support as you kneel for sext, the midday prayer. The church's cool shadows envelop you, and the psalm's rhythm soothes your weary mind. But obedience and austerity are relentless teachers, shaping you through denial and duty. You wonder, how does a man surrender his will so completely to this rule? Back in the cloister of Monte Cassino in 1050, you've begun to internalize the rule of Saint Benedict, though its demands for obedience and austerity press harder with each passing day. The monastery's routine is unyielding. You rise at midnight for matin. The rule, as historical accounts like those of Leo of Ostia describe, was a blueprint for stability, transforming Monte Cassino into a beacon of monastic reform. Yet, stability comes at a cost. Your life is no longer your own. The rule demands you submit not only to the abbot, but to your brothers, treating each as a reflection of divine will. You might be assigned to scrub pots in the kitchen, the grease clinging to your hands, or to toil in the scriptorium, copying charters under flickering candlelight. These tasks test your patience, especially when a senior monk corrects your work with a curt word. Chronicles from the period note instances of monks struggling with obedience, some questioned orders, earning penances like fasting or solitary prayer. You've seen a brother kneel for hours in the church after speaking out of turn, his face a mask of resignation. Yet, you also witness obedience's strength when a fire breaks out in the monastery. You are tasked with helping to extinguish it, a critical duty that tests your vow. Historical records, like those from Monte Cassino's own annals, describe monks rallying to protect their abbey from disasters, their obedience driving them to act as one. You work tirelessly, the smoke stinging your eyes, your hands blistered from buckets or shovels. Austerity, the rule's other pillar, defines your recovery. The rule forbids indulgence, so you return to a meal of bread and thin broth. The refectory silent, save for scripture readings. Your dormitory offers no comfort, cold, sparse, with only a single blanket. The rule's austerity teaches you to find strength in simplicity, but the fire's aftermath tests this. You mend damaged manuscripts or clear charred debris, each task a reminder of your vow to prioritize the community over self. The rule's emphasis on humility means you share tools or take the hardest tasks without complaint, though you feel the weight of sacrifice as you chant vespers in the half-repaired church. The Psalms echo with promises of divine reward, but the immediate reality is toil and scarcity. The rule structure saved Monte Cassino from ruin, its monks rebuilding through disciplined labor, as chronicled in medieval texts. Yet, you sense the human cost of such obedience, brothers who falter under the strain, their whispered doubts hushed by the abbot's glare. How does this unyielding obedience hold a community together when crisis strikes? What happens when one monk's resolve weakens, threatening the collective strength? The fire at Monte Cassino has been quelled, but its scars linger, and you, a monk in 1050, face the aftermath under the rule of Saint Benedict's unyielding demands. Obedience drove you to fight the flames, and now it compels you to rebuild. The rule, as chronicled by historians like Desiderius, a future abbot of Monte Cassino, ensured the abbey's survival through disciplined unity after disasters. You join your brothers in clearing rubble, repairing the cloister's charred beams, or salvaging manuscripts from the scriptorium's smoky ruins. Each task is an act of submission to the rule, which frames labor as prayer, but your body aches. Your hands raw from hauling stones or scrubbing soot-stained walls. Austerity shapes your recovery. The rule forbids excess, so you eat sparingly bread, a few wilted greens, and water while the refectory echoes with readings from Benedict's text. The dormitory remains stark, your palate hard, the air cold despite patched walls. Historical accounts praise Monte Cassino's monks for their resilience, rebuilding after invasions or fires through sheer discipline. You see this in your brothers. One shares his portion with a weaker novice. Another works past exhaustion to secure the roof before rain. These acts, though small, embody the rule's call for communal love, binding you together when despair looms. Yet, obedience takes its toll. You've witnessed brothers falter some sneak extra food, others murmur against the abbot's orders, earning penances like kneeling through the night. The rule demands you suppress personal desires, but you feel the strain. Hunger gnaws during long prayers, and the endless cycle of work and worship blurs into monotony. Chronicles note monks who fled, unable to bear the rule's weight. But you also see resilience, a brother teaching you to bind books tightly to save them from damp, or another praying fiercely to bolster the group. These moments, unrecorded but vital, sustain Monte Cassino's legacy. That legacy is profound. The rules structure made Monte Cassino a center of learning and faith. Its manuscripts shaping medieval thought, its rebuilt walls a symbol of endurance. Historical records, like those preserved in the Vatican archives, show how Benedict's vision spread across Europe, fostering stability in turbulent times. Your obedience, though grueling, helped rebuild a monastery that influenced kings and popes. Today, the rules, principles echo in modern institutions, universities, communities, even secular routines, rooted in disciplined cooperation. As you lie in the dormitory, the night silent, save for distant prayers, you reflect on this life, the boring grind of obedience and austerity, kneeling for hours, laboring without reward, forged a foundation for civilization. Monte Cassino's monks, through fires and famines, preserved knowledge and faith, their sacrifices enabling future generations. But at what cost? Lying on your hard pallet, you wonder, what personal hopes did these monks surrender to uphold the rule? How did their quiet, obedient lives shape a world they'd never know? Monastic diet, bread, water, and occasional fish. Picture yourself seated at a long wooden table in the refectory of a Benedictine monastery in northern England, perhaps Jarrow, in the year 1100. The air is heavy with the scent of damp stone and baked barley, and the faint light of dawn filters through narrow windows as you, a monk, prepare for the day's first meal. The Rule of Saint Benedict, your life's guide, dictates not only when you eat, but what and how. Breakfast is a simple affair, a hunk of coarse bread baked from barley or rye, and a cup of water, sometimes flavored with a drop of vinegar. The rule demands austerity, so you eat in silence, the only sound the drone of a brother reading from Scripture. Your stomach grumbles, but indulgence is forbidden. The meal is meant to sustain, not satisfy. The monastic diet is a cornerstone of the rule's call for discipline. Historical records, like those from Bede's accounts of Jarrow, describe monks subsisting on minimal fare to focus on spiritual rather than bodily needs. Bread, often gritty with millstone dust, is the mainstay, baked in communal ovens and distributed evenly. Water is drawn from the monastery's well, cold and metallic, as ale is reserved for feast days or the sick. Vegetables, cabbage, leeks, or turnips, appear occasionally, boiled into a thin gruel. Fish, usually salted herring, is a rare treat, permitted on certain holy days, as meat is largely forbidden except for the infirm. You chew slowly, the bread's toughness taxing your jaw, aware that this meal must carry you through hours of prayer and labor. Your day begins with lauds, but hunger lingers as you move to your tasks, perhaps tending the monastery's small garden or mending nets for the fish pond. The rule's emphasis on self-sufficiency means you grow or catch much of what you eat, but the northern climate yields meager harvests. Chronicles from the period, like those of Simeon of Durham, note how monasteries struggled to feed their communities, especially in lean years when frost or drought withered crops. You learn to stretch resources, saving vegetable scraps for broth or drying herbs to flavor the monotonous bread. The kitchen, a smoky hub of activity, is where you might help knead dough or clean fish, your hands raw from cold water and rough scales. This diet shapes more than your body. It tests your spirit. The rule teaches that hunger fosters humility, drawing you closer to God. But you feel the human-caused fatigue during long prayers, the ache of an empty stomach. You notice your brother's resilience. One shares a bruised apple from the orchard. Another prays with fervor despite weakness. These small acts, unrecorded but vital, reflect the rule's call for communal sacrifice. Yet, as you clear your wooden bowl, the refectory's silence feels heavy. How does this relentless austerity bread, water, and rare fish forge a monk's soul? What strength or strain lies beneath this disciplined hunger? The refectory at Jarrow Monastery remains your anchor, where the rule of Saint Benedict shapes every bite you take in 1100. By now, you've grown accustomed to the sparse meals, bread, water, and occasional vegetables, but the hunger never fully fades. The rule's austerity is a daily lesson in detachment, urging you to seek nourishment in prayer rather than food. As you sit for supper, the evening meal mirrors breakfast: a loaf of barley bread, a bowl of watery leek soup, and a cup of well water, consumed in silence, while a brother reads from the lives of saints. The rule forbids speech, but you catch fleeting glances among your brothers, their eyes betraying the same quiet craving for something more substantial. The monastic diet is not just a matter of survival, but a spiritual discipline. Historical records, like those from the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, describe how monasteries like Jarrow relied on local resources: small fields of barley, fish from nearby streams, or gifts from pious villagers. In lean times, when harvests failed, monks faced near starvation, their meals reduced to a single daily portion of bread. You help in the kitchen, grinding grain on a handcorn, the repetitive motion numbing your arms. The monastery's fish pond, stocked with eels or carp, provides rare protein, but preparing it is laborious, scaling and gutting fish under the rule's strict oversight. You've learned to preserve every scrap, boiling fish bones for broth or drying herbs to stretch flavors through winter. This austerity breeds ingenuity. You and your brothers experiment with recipes, mixing wild garlic or nettles into gruel to mask its blandness, as noted in monastic records from Durham. The rule's call for self-sufficiency drives you to tend the garden, planting hardy crops like cabbage that survive frost. Yet the labor is relentless. A poor harvest means tighter rations, and you feel the weight of hunger during the long night offices. The rule teaches that such deprivation purifies, but you notice its toll. Brothers grow gaunt, their faces pale during matins, and tempers fray over small portions. Chronicles mention monks who succumbed to temptation, sneaking food from the stores, facing penance like fasting on water alone. Community, though strained, holds you together. The rule's emphasis on charity means you share what little you have. A brother passes you a crust saved from his meal. Another offers a prayer to ease hunger's bite. These acts, though small, echo the resilience found in Jarrow's history, where monks fed villagers during famines despite their own scarcity. As you sip your water, the refectory's candlelight flickering, you reflect on the diet's purpose. It binds you to your brothers, to the rule, to a life of sacrifice. But as you rise for Compline, hunger gnawing, a question lingers. How does this relentless scarcity shape not just your faith, but your humanity? What happens when hunger pushes a monk beyond endurance? Winter grips Jarrow Monastery in 1100, and the monastic diet bread, water, and occasional fishpick comes a test of survival under the rule of Saint Benedict. You sit in the refectory, the cold seeping through stone walls, as you break a small loaf of rye bread, its texture dense and gritty. The meal is scantier now, a cup of water and a thin broth of boiled turnips. The fish ponds yield depleted until spring. The rule's austerity, meant to elevate your soul, feels like a chain, as hunger sharpens with the frost. Historical records, like those from the Historia Ecclesiae recount winters when Jarrow's monks faced famine, their stores exhausted by poor harvests or raids, yet they clung to the rule's discipline. Your days are a blur of prayer and labor, each task harder with hunger's weight. You tend the garden, digging frozen soil for forgotten roots, or mend nets for the fish pond, hoping for a spring catch. The kitchen is a battleground. You boil scraps of vegetables or fish heads, stretching every morsel. The rule's call for self-sufficiency drives these efforts, but the yield is meager. Chronicles note how Jarrow's monks shared their dwindling supplies with local poor, a charity that left them weaker. You feel this sacrifice, your hands trembling as you knead dough, your body craving more than the rule allows. The community phrase yet endures. Hunger sparks tension a brother, hoards a crust, another snaps during silent meals, earning a night of penitential prayer. The rule demands unity, but human weakness surfaces. Yet, you see resilience. A monk shares his broth with a sick novice. Another teaches you to dry fish skins for emergency rations, tricks gleaned from years of scarcity. These acts, unrecorded but vital, mirrored Jarrow's legacy of endurance. As noted in Bede's writings, where monks sustained faith and community through lean times, you draw strength from their example, chewing slowly to savor each bite, praying through fatigue. The diet's impact ripples beyond the cloister. Jarrow's monks, through their disciplined survival, preserved knowledge and charity, their gardens and fish ponds, feeding not just themselves, but the region. Historical records credit monasteries with stabilizing medieval economies, their frugality a model for survival. Today, we see echoes of this in sustainable practices or communal resilience, rooted in the rules, principles. Your hunger, though painful, was part of a larger purpose, sustaining a legacy that outlasted empires. As you lie on your pallet, the refectory's silence lingering in your mind, you reflect on this life. The boring diet bread, water, rare fish forged, a discipline that preserved a monastery, a culture, a faith. But at what cost? You wonder about the monks who broke under hunger's strain, their stories lost to history. What did they sacrifice? Health, hope, or hidden dreams to live the rule's austere ideal? How did this relentless scarcity shape not just their bodies, but the soul of a civilization? **** illness and infirmary care in medieval times. Envision yourself within the stone walls of a Benedictine monastery in the Rhineland, perhaps the Abbey of Fulda in the year 1150. You are a monk assigned to the infirmary, a small, drafty room where the sick and elderly of your community seek care. The Rule of Saint Benedict, your guiding text, emphasizes charity, and tending to the ill is among your holiest duties. The air carries the sharp scent of herbs mint and chamomile, mingled with the sourness of unwashed bodies and damp straw. A bell tolls for terce, but your work here pauses only briefly for prayer. as the needs of the sick demand your constant attention. The infirmary's narrow windows let in slivers of gray light, barely warming the chilled stone floor. Illness is a constant shadow in monastic life. Historical records, like those from Fulda's annals, describe monks battling fevers, dysentery, or lingering coughs, worsened by cold winters and sparse diets. The rule permits the sick to eat meat and rest more than healthy brothers, a rare concession to human frailty. You tend to Brother Anselm, a scribe whose eyes have weakened from years of copying manuscripts. Now feverish and shivering on a straw pallet, you prepare a poultice of crushed herbs, following recipes from texts like the Antidotarium Nicolai, a common medieval medical guide. The monastery's herb garden, which you help maintain, provides sage and fennel, believed to soothe fevers, though their effect is uncertain. Your tasks are endless: boiling water for broth, changing soiled bedding, or chanting psalms to comfort the dying. Medical knowledge is limited. You rely on prayer as much as poultices, as the rule teaches that healing comes from God. Chronicles from the period, such as those by Hildegard of Bingen, describe monasteries as centers of care, blending herbal remedies with spiritual rites. Yet, the work is grueling. Your hands chafe from washing linens in cold water, and the stench of sickness clings to your habit. Community sustains you. The rule's call for mutual care means brothers take turns in the infirmary, sharing the burden. You notice small acts of kindness. A monk brings extra firewood to warm the room. Another prays with a dying brother through the night. These moments, unrecorded but vital, reflect the monastery's resilience. Yet, illness exposes vulnerabilities. Some brothers fear contagion, hesitating to enter the infirmary, and you feel the weight of their absence. The rule demands selflessness, but human instinct falters as you apply a damp cloth to Anselm's forehead. His fever unbroken, you pause to light a candle for his recovery. The infirmary's silence, broken by coughs and murmured prayers, feels heavy. You've seen brothers recover, but others slip away, their bodies buried in the monastery's graveyard. How does this relentless cycle of care, blending faith and frail remedies, shape a monk's spirit? What happens when illness overwhelms the infirmary's meager resources? In the infirmary of Fulda Abbey in 1150, you remain bound to the care of the sick, a duty that tests both your faith and endurance. Under the rule of Saint Benedict, the winter deepens and the infirmary grows busier, its pallets filled with monks suffering from fevers, joint pains, or festering wounds. The rule's call for charity keeps you at Brother Anselm's side, his fever now joined by a rattling cough that worries you. You mix a tonic of honey and hyssop, a remedy drawn from the monastery's copy of Cassiodorus's medical texts, but its effects are slow. Historical records, like those from Fulda's own chronicles, describe infirmaries as vital to life, offering care to monks and locals alike, yet always stretched thin by limited knowledge and supplies. Your work is a grind of practical and spiritual tasks. You grind herbs in a mortar, the scent of thyme sharp in the cold air, and brew infusions to ease coughs. The rule allows the sick better food broth with bits of meat or softened bread, but supplies are scarce, and you ration carefully. You change Anselm's bedding, the straw damp with sweat, and wash linens in icy water, your hands red and cracked. Between tasks, you lead prayers, as the rule insists that spiritual care outweighs bodily healing. Chronicles from the period, like those of Otto of Freising, note how monks balanced these roles, their infirmaries serving as early hospitals. Though reliant on prayer as much as medicine, the infirmary exposes the monastery's fragility. Disease spreads easily in the close quarters of the dormitory, and you've seen healthy brothers fall ill after tending the sick. The rule demands courage, but fear lingers. You notice a novice hesitate at the infirmary door, wary of contagion. Historical accounts mention monks who shirked this duty, facing penance like solitary fasting. Yet, you also see resilience. A brother stays late to spoon broth to a fevered monk. Another donates his blanket to warm a patient. These acts, though small, embody the rule's communal spirit, binding you through shared sacrifice. Your knowledge, though limited, grows through trial. You learn to spot signs of recovery, a clearer eye, a steadier breath, or decline, like Anselm's worsening cough. The monastery's herb garden, your lifeline, yields less in winter, forcing you to dry leaves or barter with local healers for supplies. The rule's emphasis on self-sufficiency drives these efforts, but you feel the strain. Long hours in the infirmary leave you weary, your prayers during vespers faltering from exhaustion. You wonder if your remedies do more harm than good, as medieval texts often mixed superstition with science. As you light another candle, its flicker weak against the infirmary's chill. You check Anselm's pulse, his breathing shallow. The rule promises divine healing, but doubt creeps in as you face another night of vigilance. Survival depends on this care, yet resources dwindle, and more brothers fall ill. How does a monk cling to faith when remedies fail? What happens when the infirmary becomes a place of death rather than healing? Winter tightens its grip on Fulda Abbey in 1150, and the infirmary, where you serve as a monk, becomes a battleground against illness under the rule of Saint Benedict. Brother Anselm's cough has worsened, his fever unbroken, and the infirmary's pallets are now full, with monks and a few local poor suffering from chills, boils, or wasting sickness. The rule's call for charity binds you to this work, but the toll is heavy. Your hands tremble from fatigue, and the air reeks of sickness and burnt herbs. Historical records, like those preserved in Fulda's library, describe infirmaries as lifelines, saving monks and villagers through care rooted in faith, yet often powerless against rampant disease. Your tasks are relentless. You brew tonics, from dwindling herbs, rosemary for fevers, willow bark for pain-following recipes, from texts like the Physica of Hildegard of Bingen. The rule permits the sick extra food, but the monastery's stores are low. You dilute broth to stretch it, serving it with stale bread. You wash linens, scrub floors, and chant psalms for the dying, each act a blend of duty and desperation. Chronicles from the period note how monasteries like Fulda became regional healers, their infirmaries offering what little medicine existed, though prayer often outweighed potions. You've seen recoveries of monks, fever breaking after days of care, but also losses, bodies wrapped in coarse cloth for burial, the community phrase under strain. The rule demands selflessness, but fear of contagion sparks tension. Some brothers avoid the infirmary, earning sharp rebukes from the abbot. You've felt this fear yourself. hesitating before touching a fevered brow. Yet the rule's call to serve prevails. Resilience shines through. A brother shares his ration of broth with a patient. Another stays awake to comfort a dying novice. These moments, unrecorded but vital, echo Fulda's history, where monks endured plagues through shared sacrifice. As noted in the annals of Fulda, the infirmary's legacy is profound. Your care, however limited, sustained a community that preserved knowledge and faith, its herb gardens and remedies laying groundwork for modern medicine. Historical records credit monasteries with early pharmacology, their trial and error methods, shaping healing practices. Today, we see echoes of this in herbal remedies or community care, rooted in the rule's ethos of service. But the cost is clear. Anselm slips away one night, his breath fading as you pray beside him. You bury him. At dawn, the graveyard growing crowded, as you collapse onto your pallet, the infirmary's weight lingers. The boring grind of care-mixing herbs, washing linens, praying through loss forged a monastery's survival, a cornerstone of medieval society. But at what cost? You wonder about the monks who burned out, their health or hope broken by this relentless duty. What did they sacrifice? Strength, sanity, or silent dreams to tend the sick in a world with so little to offer? How did their quiet, desperate care shape a future they'd never see? Asterisk, the cloistered life. Isolation from the world. Step into the quiet cloister of a Cistercian monastery in Yorkshire, England, perhaps Rievaulx Abbey, in the year 1170. You are a monk, newly vowed to a life of seclusion under the rule of Saint Benedict, which calls for a withdrawal from the world to seek God in silence and prayer. The Abbey, nestled in a remote valley, is a fortress of solitude, its stone walls shielding you from the clamor of feudal disputes and bustling market towns. The air smells of damp earth and beeswax, and the faint toll of a bell summons you to prime, where you join your brothers in chanting psalms, your voice blending into the stillness of the stone church. The rule's demand for isolation is absolute. Unlike secular priests, you've renounced family, property, and worldly ties. As Cistercian reforms, championed by figures like Bernard of Clairvaux, emphasize a stricter separation from society. Historical records, such as Rievaulx's own charters, describe monks choosing remote sites to avoid distraction, their days filled with prayer, manual labor, and study. You rise at midnight for matins, the first of 8 daily offices, your straw pallet offering little comfort after a short sleep. Meals are sparse barley bread and vegetable broth eaten in silence in the refectory, where a brother reads scripture to keep your mind from wandering to worldly thoughts. Your tasks reinforce this isolation. You might tend sheep in the abbey's fields, the bleating of the flock, your only company, or copy manuscripts in the scriptorium, the scratch of your quill, a solitary rhythm. The rule forbids idle talk, and even necessary words are spoken sparingly, often through hand signals to preserve silence. Chronicles from the period, like those of Alred of Rievaulx, note how this seclusion fostered contemplation, but also loneliness. You feel it keenly, the absence of family, the weight of silence, the endless cycle of prayer and work that fills your days but leaves your heart aching for connection. Yet, the cloister breeds resilience. You notice small acts of community, brother's nod during vespers, another sharing a tool in the fields. These moments, unrecorded but vital, sustain you, reflecting the rule's call for mutual support within isolation. The Abbey's remoteness protects it from external chaos, but it also amplifies internal struggles. You've heard whispers of monks who faltered, tempted to flee back to the world, their stories recorded in Cistercian annals as warnings. As you kneel in the church, the cold stone biting through your habit, you ponder the purpose of this seclusion. It's meant to draw you closer to God, but the silence feels heavy, almost oppressive. How does a monk endure this chosen isolation, cut off from the world's warmth? What inner battles rage in the quiet of the cloister? The cloistered life at Rievaulx Abbey in 1170 deepens your isolation, as the Rule of Saint Benedict and Cistercian reforms demand a near total withdrawal from the world. By now, you've grown accustomed to the rhythm of silence, broken only by the tolling bell and the chant of psalms during the 8 daily offices. The Abbey's remote valley, surrounded by rolling moors, feels like a world apart. Its stone cloister, a barrier against the noise of village life or feudal wars. Historical records, like those from the Vita Aureti by Walter Daniel, describe Rievaulx as a haven of contemplation, where monks sought God through solitude. But you feel the weight of that solitude in every step. Your days are a cycle of prayer and labor, each reinforcing your separation. You might work in the Abbey's forge, hammering iron for tools, the clang of metal, a rare sound in the silent routine. Or you tend the orchard, pruning apple trees under a gray sky, alone with your thoughts. The rule's emphasis on silence extends to meals, where you eat simple fare bread, boiled greens, and water in the refectory. Listening to readings from the Rule or Saints' Lives, Cistercian austerity, stricter than Benedictine norms, forbids idle chatter, and you've learned hand signals to request salt or a knife, preserving the cloister's quiet. Chronicles note how this silence sharpened focus but also strained monks, some longing for human connection. Isolation shapes your inner world. The Rule teaches that solitude fosters communion with God, but it also breeds loneliness. You recall your life before the monastery perhaps, a farmer's son or a minor noble now, a distant memory forbidden by vows. Letters from family, if they arrive, are read by the abbot first, and personal ties are discouraged. Historical accounts, like those of Jocelyn of Furness, mention monks who struggled with this detachment, some sneaking letters or fleeing to towns, facing penance or expulsion. You feel the temptation yourself, especially during long nights in the dormitory, where the snores of your brothers are your only company. Yet, the cloister holds moments of quiet strength. A brother shares a rare smile during compline, another leaves a neatly stacked pile of firewood for you to find. These small gestures, unrecorded but essential, echo the Rule's call for communal love within solitude. Rievaulx monks, through their isolation, preserved manuscripts and spiritual traditions, their seclusion enabling focused labor that shaped medieval faith, as noted in Cistercian records. As you pause in the cloister, the wind carrying the scent of wet stone, you reflect on this paradox. The silence that isolates you also binds you to a higher purpose. But as you prepare for Vespers, the Abbey's stillness pressing in, a question lingers. How does a monk find peace in such profound solitude? What happens when the weight of isolation threatens to break the spirit? Winter cloaks Rievaulx Abbey in 1170, and the cloistered life, governed by the rule of Saint Benedict, feels more isolating than ever. The Cistercian ideal of seclusion, rooted in the reforms of Bernard of Clairvaux, has molded you into a monk who lives apart from the world. Your days filled with prayer, labor, and silence. The Abbey's valley, now dusted with snow, amplifies this separation. Its remoteness, a shield against worldly chaos, but a cage for your restless thoughts. Historical records, like those from Rievaulx's own annals, praise the monk's solitude as a path to divine union, yet you feel the human cost nights spent shivering on a straw pallet. The silence deafening after Complin's final psalm. Your routine is unrelenting. You rise for matins at midnight, your breath visible in the frigid church, and move through the 8 daily offices, each a tether to God, but a reminder of your isolation. Labor fills the gaps, perhaps shearing sheep for wool or repairing the cloister's leaky roof, your hands numb from cold. The rule's silence is strict. Even in the fields, you communicate with gestures, avoiding words that might stir worldly thoughts. Chronicles, like those of William of Malmesbury, note how Cistercian monks maintained this discipline, their seclusion preserving sacred texts and spiritual rigor. But you feel the strain. No news from family, no laughter, just the endless cycle of prayer and work. The cloister tests your resilience. Some bros falter, as historical accounts describe monks who fled to villages, unable to bear the solitude, or whispered forbidden tales of the outside world. Earning penances, like solitary prayer, you felt the urge to speak, to share. A memory, but the rule's weight keeps you silent. Yet, community endures through small acts. A brother leaves a warmer spot by the fire for you. Another offers a steadying hand during a slippery task. These moments, unrecorded but vital, reflect the rule's balance of solitude and communal love, sustaining Rievaulx through centuries of isolation. The legacy of this life is profound. Rievaulx's monks, through their cloistered labor, produced manuscripts and wool that supported medieval culture and economy, as noted in Cistercian records. Their solitude fostered a clarity that shaped theological works, influencing the Church far beyond Yorkshire. Today, we see echoes of this in contemplative practices or minimalist lifestyles, rooted in the discipline of withdrawal. But as you lie in the dormitory, the silence heavy, you ponder the cost, the boring cloistered life, silent days. Its solitary tasks built a foundation for faith and knowledge. Yet, what did these monks sacrifice friendships, freedoms, or fleeting joys to live so apart? How did their quiet isolation shape a world they'd never rejoin? *** punishments for breaking monastic vows. Imagine yourself within the austere walls of a Benedictine monastery in Normandy, perhaps Bec Abbey, in the year 1120. You are a monk, bound by the rule of Saint Benedict, a 6th century text that demands absolute obedience, chastity, and poverty. The monastery is a sanctuary of order. Its stone cloister echoing with the chant of psalms and the toll of bells for lauds. Yet, beneath this discipline, the threat of punishment looms for those who break their vows. The air smells of damp wool and incense, and as you kneel in the church, you sense the abbot's watchful gaze, ensuring every monk adheres to the rule's strictures. The rule is clear. Violations, whether speaking during silent hours, hoarding food, or neglecting prayer, disrupt the community's harmony and invite correction. Historical records, like those from Beck's Chronicles, describe a range of punishments, from public rebukes to physical discipline, designed to restore humility. You've seen minor infractions firsthand. Brother Thomas, caught whispering in the refectory, was ordered to kneel in the chapter house, reciting psalms for an hour. The rule emphasizes correction as a path to redemption, but the shame stings, and you feel the weight of scrutiny in every task, whether tending the garden or copying manuscripts. Your day follows the rule's rhythm: 8 prayer services, manual labor, and silent meals of bread and broth. But temptation lingers. Yesterday, you nearly spoke during Vespers, a lapse that could have earned a reprimand. The rule forbids personal possessions, yet you've noticed brothers hiding small items: a sharpened quill, a scrap of cheese axe, that, if discovered, lead to penalties. Chronicles, such as those by Orderic Vitalis, note how monks at Beck faced fasting or confinement for such breaches. Their punishments, a public lesson in obedience. You learn to suppress impulses, but the effort is draining. The cloisters silence, amplifying your inner struggles. Community holds you accountable, yet offers solace. The rule's call for mutual correction means brothers report infractions, but you also see compassion: a monk covering for another's tardiness to prayers, a shared glance of understanding after a rebuke. These moments, unrecorded but vital, balance the rule's severity with mercy. As you pause in the scriptorium, your quill poised over parchment, you reflect on the stakes. Punishment isn't just discipline. It's a safeguard for the monastery's spiritual mission. But as you prepare for Compline, the threat of error hangs heavy. How does a monk navigate this rigid code where every misstep risks shame? What toll does the fear of punishment take on a soul striving for holiness? The cloister of Beck Abbey in 1120 remains a crucible of discipline, where the rule of Saint Benedict enforces obedience through the ever-present threat of punishment. As a monk, you've internalized the rule's demands: silence, poverty, and submission, but the fear of breaking your vows shadows every action. By now, you've witnessed the consequences of transgression. Brother Thomas, after his whispering in the refectory, endured a week of reduced rations, his gaunt face a warning during meals. Historical records, like those from the Historia Ecclesiastica by Orderic Vitalis, detail how Beck's monks faced penalties ranging from public confession to flogging for serious breaches like theft or defiance. Your days are a tightrope walk of compliance. During matins, you chant psalms in the cold church, your voice blending with others, but a wandering thought could lead to a missed verse, inviting the abbot's rebuke. In the fields, you hoe rows of turnips, the rule's call for labor keeping. You focused, yet you've seen brothers disciplined for laziness, assumed extra hours of weeding or solitary prayer. The rule's chapter on punishment, as noted in medieval commentaries, prescribes escalating measures: private admonition, public shaming, fasting, or, for grave sins, expulsion. You recall Brother Simon, caught hiding a silver coin, forced to stand in the chapter house while the community recited his fault, his humiliation a lesson etched in your memory. Temptation tests your resolve. The rule forbids personal attachments, but you felt the urge to keep a small tokona smooth stone from the river, knowing discovery could mean a night kneeling in the church. Chronicles describe monks who broke chastity or fled to towns, facing excommunication or imprisonment in the monastery's cell. Yet you also see the rule's mercy. The abbot offers penance before punishment, urging repentance. You've noticed brothers quietly supporting each other, monk covering a novice's tardiness, another sharing bread to ease a fasting penalty. These acts, unrecorded but essential, soften the rule's harsh edges, fostering unity amid fear. The monastery's discipline shapes its legacy. Beck's strict adherence to the rule, as noted in historical accounts, produced scholars like Anselm, whose writings influenced medieval theology. Punishment ensured this rigor, preserving a community that shaped the church. As you work in the scriptorium, copying a treatise under candlelight, you feel the rule's dual nature. Its punishments protect order but stifle humanity. During Vespers, the Psalm's promise of forgiveness contrasts with the fear of error. How does a monk balance devotion with the dread of discipline? What happens when punishment meant to redeem instead breeds resentment or despair? Winter descends on Bec Abbey in 1120, and the rule of Saint Benedict's punishments for breaking vows feel sharper in the cold, where survival demands discipline but tests human limits. As a monk, you navigate the cloister's strict order, where every misstep's peeking out of turn, neglecting prayer, or hoarding food risks correction. The rule's penalties, as described in Beck's Chronicles, aim to restore humility, but their weight is heavy. You've seen Brother Thomas, after his fasting penance, return to the refectory subdued, his spirit dimmed. Historical records, like those of Eadmer, note how Beck's monks endured punishments to maintain the abbey's reputation as a center of piety and learning. Your routine is relentless, rising for matins at midnight, laboring in the icy fields, or scrubbing the refectory's floors, all under the rule's watchful code. A recent incident lingers. Brother Simon, caught stealing bread during a lean month, was confined to a cell for a week, emerging pale and silent. The rule allows such measures to deter sin, but you feel the community's strains. Some brothers avoid Simon, others whisper of his shame. Chronicles recount harsher cases, monks flogged for repeated defiance or expelled for grave sins like heresy, their absence a wound to the cloister's unity. You suppress your own urges, a fleeting thought to skip sext for warning. The abbot's scrutiny never wanes, yet resilience persists. The rule's call for correction is tempered by redemption. A brother helps Simon carry water after his confinement, another prays for his strength. These small acts, unrecorded but vital, echo Beck's history of balancing justice with mercy, as noted in Anselm's letters. You find strength in routine, chanting psalms through chattering teeth, or sharing a tool without complaint, the rule's communal spirit holding firm. Punishment, though harsh, preserves the monastery's mission, ensuring manuscripts are copied, fields tilled, and prayers unbroken, shaping a legacy that influenced medieval Europe's intellectual and spiritual life. As you lie on your pallet, the dormitory's silence broken by distant coughs, you reflect on this life, the boring grind of discipline, its prayers, labors, and punishments forged Beck's enduring impact, its scholars and texts shaping the church for centuries. Modern notions of community discipline owe roots to this rule, but the cost is clear. You wonder about the monks broken by punishment, their spirits crushed under shame or isolation. What did they sacrifice, dignity, hope, or hidden rebellions to uphold the rule's order? How did their quiet suffering, under the lash of discipline, shape a world they'd never fully know? Asterisk, asterisk, building cathedrals, monks as laborers. Picture yourself standing in the shadow of a half-built cathedral at the Cluniac Monastery of Vézelay, France. In the year 1130, you are a monk, bound by the rule of Saint Benedict. But today your labor extends beyond prayer to the monumental task of constructing a grand church. The air is thick with dust and the scent of cut stone, the clatter of chisels and creak of wooden scaffolds filling the morning. The rule calls for ora et laboro, prayer and work, and here, your work is to help erect a cathedral that will glorify God and draw pilgrims. The bell tolls for terce, but you pause only briefly, your hands calloused from hauling limestone blocks. The construction of cathedrals like Vézelay's Basilica of St. Mary Magdalene is a communal effort, with monks often serving as laborers alongside hired masons. Historical records, such as those from Cluny's archives, describe monks contributing to such projects, their manual labor seen as a form of worship. You work under the master builder's direction, carrying stones from the quarry or mixing mortar with sand and lime. The rule's emphasis on humility means you take on the dirtiest tasks, shoveling earth or cleaning tools, without complaint. Each block you set is a step toward a sacred space, but the work is grueling, your back aching under the weight of stone and the summer sun. Your day balances prayer and labor. After lauds, you join the cathedral site, hauling ropes to lift beams or clearing rubble. The rule's 8 daily offices interrupt the work, pulling you to the temporary chapel to chant psalms, your voice hoarse from dust. Meals are simple bread, beans, and water eaten in silence in the refectory, where readings from scripture remind you of the spiritual purpose behind your toil. Chronicles, like those of Hugh of Poitiers, note how Cluniac monks built structures that became pilgrimage centers, their labor shaping medieval devotion. Yet, you feel the physical toll: blisters on your hands, exhaustion in your bones. Community binds you to this task. You work alongside brothers, sharing the loathsome mixed mortar. Others carve stone, each act a testament to the rule's call for unity. You notice small gestures. A brother steadies a ladder for you. Another shares his water skin. These moments, unrecorded but vital, ease the strain. Though accidents happen, a slipped stone bruises a foot, a scaffold creaks ominously. As you pause to wipe sweat from your brow, the cathedral's rising arches loom above, a symbol of faith in progress. But the labor is relentless, and you wonder, how does a monk endure this back-breaking work as an act of devotion? What strength or cost lies in building a cathedral, one stone at a time? The construction site at Vézelay's Cathedral in Senling remains your world, where you, a monk, labor under the rule of Saint Benedict to build a monument to faith. The rule's call for ora et labora drives you to balance prayer with the physical demands of hauling stone and mixing mortar. By now, you've grown accustomed to the rhythm, rising for matins at midnight, chanting psalms in the temporary chapel. Then, joining the cathedral site at dawn, the air hums with the chisel's bite and the shouts of masons. But the rule's discipline keeps you focused. Your hands raw from ropes and rough limestone. Historical records, like those from Cluny's Chronicles, describe monks as vital to such projects. Their labor blending spiritual and practical devotion. Your tasks are varied but punishing. You might drag heavy stones from the quarry, your shoulders straining under the weight, or climb scaffolds to place beams, the dizzying height testing your nerve. The rule's humility means you take orders from the master builder, a layman whose sharp commands contrast with the abbot's gentle authority. You learn to cut stone with precision, guided by templates, or to mix lime mortar that binds the cathedral's walls. Chronicles, such as those by Suger of St. Denis, note how monastic labor on cathedrals like Vézelay created architectural marvels, their soaring arches drawing pilgrims across Europe. Yet each day leaves you aching, dust-caking, your habit, your body pushed to its limits. The cathedral's progress comes at a cost. Accidents are common. A brother falls from a scaffold, bruising his ribs. Another cuts his hand on a chisel. The rule allows the injured better food broth with herbs, but rest is scarce as the project presses on. You've seen tempers flare under the strain, brothers grumbling over endless tasks, though the rule forbids murmuring and the abbot's rebuke is swift. Historical accounts mention monks who shirked labor, facing penances like fasting or extra prayers. Yet, you also see resilience. A brother shares his gloves to ease your blisters. Another sings a hymn to lift spirits on the site. These acts, unrecorded but essential, echo the rule's communal spirit. The cathedral's rising form inspires awe, its nave taking shape as a testament to your collective effort. Your labor, though exhausting, contributes to a legacy that will outlast you. As Vézelay became a hub for pilgrims seeking relics of Mary Magdalene. As you pause to drink water, the sun glinting off half-built arches, you reflect on this dual life of prayer and toil. The rule frames this work as worship, but the physical and mental strain is undeniable. How does a monk find meaning in this grueling labor? What happens when exhaustion or injury threatens the community's resolve? Winter slows the construction of Vézelay's cathedral in Yaoyel-Senling. But as a monk, your labor continues under the rule of Saint Benedict, binding you to this sacred task despite the cold. The rule's ora et labora drives you to rise for pray in the frost-bitten chapel, then trudge to the site where icy winds cut through your woolen habit. The cathedral's walls rise higher, but progress is halting. Frozen mortar delays work and snow buries tools. Historical records, like those from Cluniac annals, praise monks for their role in building cathedrals. Their labor forging spiritual centers like Vézelay's Basilica. Yet you feel the toll, hands cracked from cold, muscles sore from lifting. Damp stone. Your tasks shift with the season. You clear snow from the site, or repair scaffolds battered by storms, each job a test of endurance. The rule's humility keeps you at the lowliest tasks, shoveling mud or hauling firewood to keep masons warm. You've learned to carve stone, your chisel guided by the master builder's plans. But mistakes mean wasted effort, and the abbot expects perfection as an act of devotion. Chronicles, like those of Peter the Venerable, describe monks enduring such hardships, their work on cathedrals shaping medieval piety. But injuries mount. A brother sprains his ankle on icy ground. Another falls ill from exposure. And the rule's sparse meals of bread and broth offer little strength. Community holds you together, though strain shows. The rule demands unity, but fatigue sparks tension. A monk snaps over a misplaced tool, earning a public rebuke in the chapter house. Historical accounts note monks who rebelled against such labor, facing penances like solitary work or fasting. Yet, resilience shines. A brother shares his cloak during a blizzard. Another prays for the injured, their acts echoing the rule's call for charity. These moments, unrecorded but vital, sustain the project, as Vézelay Cathedral rises as a beacon for pilgrims, its legacy preserved in records of Cluniac influence. The cathedral's impact endures. Your labor helped build a structure that drew thousands, its relics and architecture shaping medieval faith and economy, as noted in pilgrimage accounts. Today, we see echoes of this in historic preservation or communal projects rooted in the rules, disciplined cooperation. As you rest in the dormitory, the wind howling outside, you reflect on this life, the boring grind of labor hauling stone, enduring cold. Praying through pain created a cathedral that outlasted empires, but at what cost? You wonder about the monks broken by this toil, their bodies or spirits worn down. What did they sacrifice, hope, or hidden dreams to build this monument? How did their quiet, back-breaking work shape a world they'd never fully witness? Asterisk, pilgrims and hospitality, monastic guest houses. Imagine yourself standing at the gatehouse of a Benedictine monastery in Canterbury, England, perhaps St. Augustine's Abbey. In the year 1180, you are a monk tasked with tending the guest house, a vital duty under the Rule of Saint Benedict, which commands hospitality to all who arrive as if they were Christ himself. The air carries the scent of wood smoke and damp straw, and the distant chant of psalms from the church blends with the clatter of pilgrims' footsteps on the cobblestone path. The guest house, a sturdy stone building near the Abbey's entrance, buzzes with weary travelers, pilgrims seeking St. Thomas Becket's shrine, merchants or local peerage expecting shelter and care. The rule's call for hospitality shapes your day. You rise for matins, then head to the guest house to prepare beds of straw pallets and light the hearth. Pilgrims arrive daily, their muddy boots and heavy cloaks a contrast to your simple habit. You offer them bread, ale, and a bowl of pottage beans, and leeks boiled into a thin stew as prescribed by the rule's emphasis on charity. Historical records, like those from Canterbury's archives, describe monasteries as key stops on pilgrimage routes, their guest houses sheltering hundreds. Annually, your task is to serve without judgment, whether the guest is a noble or a beggar. Though their demands test your patience, your work is relentless, sweeping floors, washing linens, or fetching water from the well. Your hands chapped from cold. The rule requires you to greet each guest with a bow and a prayer. But some pilgrims are rowdy, demanding more food or complaining about the sparse accommodations. Chronicles, such as those by Gervas of Canterbury, note how monks balanced hospitality with discipline, occasionally turning away disruptive guests. You feel the strains, miling through exhaustion, calming a drunken pilgrim, or soothing a sick child. Yet the rule demands humility, and you obey, your labor a quiet offering. Community supports this mission. Brothers take turns in the guest house, sharing tasks like baking bread or mending blankets. You notice small acts of kindness. A monk offers his cloak to a shivering pilgrim. Another prays with a grieving traveler. These moments, unrecorded but vital, embody the rule's spirit of service. As you light candles in the guest house, the glow illuminating tired faces, you reflect on its purpose. Hospitality binds the monastery to the world. It shuns a paradox of isolation and openness. But as you prepare for Vespers, the clamor of guests lingering, you wonder, how does a monk maintain serenity amid this chaos? What toll does this endless service take on a cloistered soul? At St. Augustine's Abbey in 1180, the guest house remains. Your domain, where the rule of Saint Benedict's call for hospitality transforms you, a monk, into a servant of strangers. By now, you've grown accustomed to the rhythm, rising for lauds, then hurrying to the guest house to tend to pilgrims bound for Becket's shrine. The stone hall hums with voices, pilgrims swapping tales, merchants bartering, or beggars seeking warmth. The rule demands you treat each as Christ, offering bread, ale, and a pallet. But the work is grueling. You scrub tables, haul firewood, and serve pottage, your body aching from dawn to dusk. Historical records, like those from the Acta Sancta, describe Canterbury's monasteries as bustling hubs, their guest houses vital to pilgrims and the local economy. Your tasks test your endurance. You mend torn blankets, clean mud tracked in by travelers, or calm disputes over sleeping space. The rule's hospitality extends to all, but some guests challenge your patience, pilgrims, demanding meat forbidden by monastic rules, or leaving the hall in disarray. Chronicles note how monks at Canterbury managed such chaos, occasionally expelling unruly guests to preserve order, as recorded by William of Canterbury. You've learned to navigate these tensions, offering a kind word to soothe a weary pilgrim, or a firm one to quiet a drunkard. The rule's emphasis on humility keeps you grounded. Though exhaustion creeps in during long nights of tending sick or restless travelers, the guest house reveals the monastery's dual role, a cloister of solitude and a beacon for the world. Pilgrims bring news of wars or harvests, tempting you with glimpses of the life you've renounced. Yet the rule forbids dwelling on such talk. You've seen brothers struggle, one eavesdropping on a merchant's gossip, earning a rebuke for breaking silence. Historical accounts mention monks disciplined for such lapses, facing fasting or extra prayers. Yet, you also see resilience. A brother shares his ration with a starving pilgrim. Another prays through the night with a dying traveler. These acts, unrecorded but essential, reflect the rule's call for charity amid the chaos of hospitality. The guest house's impact is profound. Your service supports pilgrims who fuel Canterbury's spiritual and economic life, as noted in medieval pilgrimage records. Monasteries like yours laid the foundation for modern hospitality, their guest houses, early models of communal care. As you sweep the hall, the chatter of pilgrims filling the air, you ponder this paradox. The rule isolates you from the world, yet demands you serve it. How does a monk balance this open door with a cloistered heart? What happens when the demands of hospitality overwhelm the serenity of monastic life? Winter blankets, St. Augustine's Abbey in 1180, and the guest house where you serve as a monk becomes a refuge for shivering pilgrims under the rule of Saint Benedict. The rules command to welcome all as Christ drives you through relentless tasks, stoking the hearth to warm the stone hall, serving scant meals of bread and pottage, or washing linens in icy water. The guest house is crowded now, with pilgrims seeking Becket's shrine, their boots tracking snow across the floor. Historical records, like those from Canterbury's monastic ledgers, highlight the guest house's role as a lifeline, sheltering hundreds and sustaining the Abbey's place in the pilgrimage network. Yet the strain on you is immense, your hands cracked, your sleep broken by late arrivals. Your duties intensify with the cold. You haul extra firewood, mend leaking roofs, and tend to sick pilgrims, some coughing with winter fevers. The rule allows better food for the ill-broth with herbs, but supplies dwindle, and you ration carefully. Chronicles, like those by Benedict of Peterborough, describe monks at Canterbury enduring such pressures, their hospitality a testament to faith, but a test of endurance. You've seen tensions flare. A pilgrim demands more ale, another steals a blanket, prompting a stern warning from the abbot. The rule's discipline holds, but you feel the human cost: exhaustion during coupling, the weight of serving strangers while craving the cloister's peace. Taught community sustains you through the chaos. The rule's call for charity shines in small acts. A brother brews extra pottage for a hungry family. Another shares his scarf with a frostbitten pilgrim. These moments, unrecorded but vital, echo Canterbury's history of hospitality, as noted in pilgrimage accounts. Yet, strange shows some brothers grumble about endless guests, risking penance for breaking the rules. Silence. You've felt it too, tempted to snap at a demanding traveler, but the rule's humility pulls you back. Your service, though grueling, supports a legacy. Guest houses, like yours, fostered medieval travel, their openness shaping early inns and modern charity. As you light the guest house candles, their glow warming tired faces, you reflect on this life, the boring grind of hospitality, serving, cleaning, praying through fatigue-made monasteries like Canterbury, hubs of faith and refuge. Their influence enduring in today's communal care, but at what cost? You wonder about the monks, worn down by this service, their spirits frayed by endless demands. What did they sacrifice? Solitude or quiet dreams to open their doors to the world? How did their tireless hospitality, rooted in the rule, shape a society they served, but never fully joined? Asterisk, monastic education, teaching. Novices, envision yourself in the scriptorium of a Benedictine monastery in Paris, perhaps the Abbey of Saint Denis in the year 1150. You are a monk tasked with educating novices, young men who have entered the monastery to learn the Rule of Saint Benedict and the skills needed for a life of prayer and service. The scriptorium smells of ink, parchment, and candle wax, its stone walls echoing with the soft scratch of quills and the murmur of Latin prayers. The rule emphasizes teaching as a sacred duty, and you guide novices through scripture, grammar, and the chants of the divine office, shaping their minds and souls for monastic life. The education of novices is rigorous, blending spiritual and intellectual discipline. Historical records, like those from St. Denis's Chronicles, describe monasteries as centers of learning, training boys as young as 7 in reading, writing, and theology. You teach a small group, including young Peter, a nervous boy of 12, to recite psalms and copy Latin texts. The rule demands obedience, so you correct their posture or pronunciation sternly, yet with patience as they stumble through the Psalter. Lessons occur between the 8 daily offices, with breaks for simple meals of bread and broth in the refectory, where silence reigns, save for scripture readings. Your tasks are demanding, preparing lessons, mending quills, or checking parchment for errors, all while ensuring novices adhere to the rule's strictures. You teach them to read Cicero for rhetoric, Augustine for theology, and the rule itself for discipline, as monasteries preserved classical knowledge per records like those of Suger of Saint Denis. But the novices test your resolve. Peter forgets his lines, another daydreams during lessons. The rule permits mild punishments, like extra prayers, to curb inattention. And you've seen boys kneel in the chapter house for lapses, a practice noted in medieval monastic texts. Your own patience phrase, yet you strive to embody the rules. Call for charity. Community supports this work. Brothers assist by chanting with novices or sharing teaching duties. Their small acts a nod of encouragement, a corrected text teasing. Your load, these moments, unrecorded but vital, reflect the monastery's collective mission to form new monks. As you guide Peter through a Latin conjugation, his eyes bright with effort, you feel the weight of your role. Educating novices preserves the monastery's legacy, but it's a slow, meticulous task. How does a monk balance strict discipline with nurturing young souls? What toll does teaching, with its endless corrections, take on a teacher's spirit? In the scriptorium of Saint Denis Abbey in 1150, your role as a monk teaching novices deepens, as the Rule of Saint Benedict frames education as a sacred act of shaping souls for God. By now, you've grown accustomed to the rhythm, rising for matins, chanting psalms, then guiding novices like Peter through lessons in Latin, scripture, and the chants of the divine office. The scriptorium hums with their halting recitations, the air heavy with parchment dust and the flicker of candles. Historical records, like those from the Gesta Abbatum of St. Denis's, highlight monasteries as intellectual hubs, training novices to preserve knowledge and faith. But the task tests your endurance and patience. Your lessons are structured but demanding. You teach novices to read Boethius for philosophy, memorize the Psalter, and master the Gregorian chant. Their voices often faltering during lauds. The rule's emphasis on obedience means you correct errors firmly. Peter's mispronounced Latin earns extra recitation practice. You prepare texts, sharpen quills, and oversee their copying, ensuring accuracy. As monasteries like St. Denis produced manuscripts that shaped medieval thought, per Chronicles of Suger. But the novices, inattention, whispering, or sloppy, script tries you. The rule allows penances like standing during lessons or fasting, and you've seen boys disciplined thus, as noted in monastic records, their faces flushed with shame. The work exposes the novice's humanity and your own. Peter struggles with grammar, his frustration clear, while another boy hides a forbidden sketch, risking a rebuke. Historical accounts, like those of Gibbert of Nogent, describe novices rebelling against such rigor, some fleeing the monastery, though most endure through correction. You feel the tension, balancing the rule's strictness with compassion, offering a kind word when Peter finally recites a psalm correctly. Community sustains you. A brother helps teach chant, another shares a text, to ease your load. These acts, unrecorded but essential, reflect the rule's communal spirit, binding you through shared duty. The education you provide shapes more than the novices. St. Denis's school trained monks who influenced theology and governance, their manuscripts spreading across Europe, as noted in medieval records. Your teaching, though tedious, preserves this legacy. As you correct Peter's parchment under candlelight, his progress slow but steady, you reflect on this role. The rule demands discipline, but nurturing young minds requires patience beyond its strictures. How does a monk foster learning in boys torn between youth and monastic vows? What happens when the weight of teaching, with its endless corrections, frays the teacher's faith? Winter cloaks St. Denis Abbey in 1150. And your task as a monk teaching novices under the rule of Saint Benedict grows harder in the cold, drafty scriptorium. The rule's call to educate young monks like Peter for a life of prayer and service drives you through lessons in Latin, theology, and chant, despite frozen ink and shivering hands. The monastery's school, a beacon of learning, as described in chronicles like those of Suger, trains novices to carry forward faith and knowledge, but the work is relentless. You correct Peter's faltering psalms or sloppy script, your patience tested as the rule demands precision, while the chill amplifies the novice's restlessness. Your duties intensify with the season. You teach between the 8 daily offices, guiding novices through Augustine's writings or the rule's precepts, their breath visible in the icy air. You mend cracked parchment, reheat ink over a brazier, and ensure each boy masters the Psalter. As monasteries like St. Denis preserved texts that shaped medieval Europe per historical records, but the novice's struggle Peter forgets his lines. Another doodles during lessons, earning penances like extra prayers or standing through sext chronicles, such as those by Abelard. Note how such discipline curbed youthful rebellion, though some boys withdrew, unable to bear the rigor. You feel the strain, correcting errors while maintaining the rules. Charity community holds the school together. Brothers share teaching tasks, one chanting with novices, another checking their work, their small acts easing your burden. These moments, unrecorded but vital, echo St. Denis's history of collective education, as noted in monastic annals. Yet tension surfaces. A novice's defiance sparks a sharp rebuke, and you wrestle with your own frustration, tempted to scold harshly. The rule's balance of discipline and mercy guides you, as when you praise Peter's improved chant, his smile a rare reward. Your teaching sustains a legacy. Monks trained here influenced church doctrine and secular governance, their education a cornerstone of medieval culture. As you rest in the dormitory, the scriptorium's silence lingering, you reflect on this life, the boring grind of teaching, correcting texts, drilling chants, praying through fatigue forged a monastery that shaped civilization. Modern education owes roots to this disciplined instruction, but the cost is clear. You wonder about the monks and novices worn down by this rigor, their spirits strained by constant correction or youthful rebellion. What did they sacrifice? Joy or unspoken dreams to uphold the rule's educational mission? How did their quiet, meticulous teaching mold a world they'd never fully see? Monastic scribes preserving knowledge. Picture yourself seated at a wooden desk in the scriptorium of a Benedictine monastery in southern Germany, Perhaps the Abbey of Reichenau in the year 1100. You are a monk tasked with the sacred duty of copying manuscripts, preserving knowledge under the rule of Saint Benedict. The scriptorium is quiet, save for the scratch of quills and the rustle of parchment. Its air heavy with the scent of ink and vellum. Narrow windows let in pale light, illuminating your work. A Latin copy of Augustine's Confessions. The Rule emphasizes ora et labora prayer, and workand your labor as a scribe is a form of worship, safeguarding texts for future generations. The role of monastic scribes is central to medieval learning. Historical records, like those from Reichenau's annals, describe the abbey as a hub of manuscript production, its monks copying scripture, classical works, and chronicles. You dip your quill in oak gall ink, carefully forming letters, your hand steady despite the cold. The rule demands precision, as errors defile sacred texts, so you work slowly, checking each line. Between the 8 daily offices matins, lauds, and beyond, you spend hours in the scriptorium, your eyes straining, fingers cramped. Meals are simple bread, lentils, and water eaten in silence. The refectory's readings reinforcing your task's spiritual weight. Your work is meticulous, but fraught with challenges. Parchment is scarce, made from calfskin you help prepare, a smelly, labor-intensive process. A single mistake means scraping the vellum clean, risking damage. Chronicles, like those of Herman of Reichenau, note how monks preserved texts like Boethius or the Gospels, their copies spreading knowledge across Europe. Yet you feel the pressure. A smudged letter could earn a rebuke, and fatigue blurs your focus during long hours. You've seen novices struggle, their sloppy scripts corrected, with extra tasks. As the rule enforces discipline in all work, community sustains you. Brothers share ink or sharpen quills, their small axe a steadying hand, a shared candle easing the strain. These moments, unrecorded but vital, reflect the rule's call for mutual support. As you pause to stretch your aching hand, the silence wraps around you, broken only by a distant bell for sext. Your work preserves the monastery's legacy, but it's a solitary, exacting task. How does a monk endure the relentless precision of scribing, where every stroke is a prayer? What toll does this quiet labor take on body and soul? In the scriptorium of Reichenau Abbey in 1100, your life as a monk and scribe deepens the rule of Saint Benedict, framing your work of copying manuscripts as a sacred act. By now, you're accustomed to the rhythm, rising for matins in the dark, chanting psalms, then settling at your desk to copy texts like Bede's ecclesiastical history. The scriptorium's chill seeps into your bones, the flicker of candles casting shadows on parchment. Historical records, like those from Reichenau's library catalogs, highlight the Abbey's role in preserving classical and Christian texts. Its scribes producing manuscripts that shaped medieval scholarship. Your quill moves deliberately, each letter a testament to the rule's call for precision. Your tasks are grueling yet holy. You prepare vellum, stretching and scraping hides, a process that leaves your hands raw. Copying demands focus, forming Carolingian, minuscule, checking for errors, or illuminating initials with red ink. The rule's discipline means a mistake, like a skipped word, could lead to penance, such as extra prayers or cleaning the scriptorium. Chronicles, like those of Regino of PRM, describe monks laboring for hours, their work preserving knowledge through invasions and chaos. But the strain is real. Your eyes blur from dim light, your back aches from hunching, and winter's cold stiffens your fingers, making each stroke a battle. The scriptorium tests your resilience. You've seen brothers falter novice, smudges a page, earning a night of solitary prayer. Another nods off, risking the abbot's rebuke. Historical accounts note monks who abandoned scribing, overwhelmed by its demands, though most endured, driven by the rule's purpose. You feel the isolation, tempted to rush a line for relief, but the rule's call for perfection holds you steady. Community helps. A brother shares his ink, another corrects your script with a kind word. These acts, unrecorded but essential, echo the rule's communal spirit. Binding you through shared toil, your work's impact is vast. Raicono's manuscripts, copied by monks like you, spread theology and philosophy across Europe, as noted. In medieval library records, your labor preserves a legacy that will outlast you, shaping church and secular thought. As you illuminate a page, the candles glow steady. You reflect on this dual life of prayer and precision. The rule sanctifies your work, but its relentless demands weigh heavy. How does a monk find meaning in this meticulous craft? What happens when the strain of scribing threatens to dim the spirit's light? Winter grips Raicono Abbey in 1100, and your work as a monastic scribe under the rule of Saint Benedict grows harder in the scriptorium's icy gloom. The rule's ora et labora drives you to balance prayer with copying manuscripts, preserving knowledge amid frost and flickering candles. You're copying a psalter now, your quill trembling as you form letters on brittle vellum, the cold numbing your fingers. Historical records, like those from Raicono's annals, praise the Abbey's scribes for safeguarding texts, scripture, Virgil, or chronicles that sustained medieval culture. Yet, the task is relentless, your eyes straining in dim light. Each page a test of endurance and devotion. Your duties intensify with the season. You prepare ink from frozen oak galls, reheat it over a brazier, and scrape vellum for reuse when mistakes occur. The rule demands flawless work, and errors like a misspelled verse mean hours of correction or penances like fasting, as noted in monastic discipline records. Chronicles, such as those by Otlo of St. Emmeram, describe scribes enduring such hardships, their manuscripts surviving as pillars of learning. But the toll is clear. Your hands cramp, your back aches, and fatigue blurs your focus during Vespers. You've seen brothers struggle, one ruins a page, facing solitary prayer, another falls ill from the cold, halting his work. Community holds the scriptorium together. Brothers share candles or mend quills, their small, axa-warm cloth, corrected, line easing your burden. These moments, unrecorded but vital, reflect Raicono's history of collective preservation, as noted in its library records. Yet, strange shows, a novice's sloppy script sparks tension, and you wrestle with frustration, tempted to rush your work. The rule's balance of discipline and charity guides you, as when you help a struggling brother align his text, your scribing sustains a legacy. Raicono's manuscripts shaped theology, law, and literature, influencing medieval Europe and beyond, as seen in modern archival studies. As you rest in the dormitory, the scriptorium's silence lingering, you reflect on this life, the boring grind of scribing ginking letters, scraping vellum, praying through pain forged, a monastery that preserved civilization's knowledge. Modern libraries owe roots to this meticulous craft, but the cost is evident. You wonder about the scribes worn down by this labor, their bodies or spirits strained by endless precision. What did they sacrifice, health, joy, or quiet dreams, to preserve these texts? How did their silent, painstaking work shape a world they'd never fully know? Monastic brewing, ale and wine production. Step into the bustling brewhouse of a Benedictine monastery in Bavaria, perhaps Weihenstephan Abbey, in the year 1120. You are a monk tasked with brewing ale, a vital duty under the Rule of Saint Benedict, which permits moderate drink to sustain the community. The air is thick with the malty scent of barley and the tang of fermenting yeast. The stone-walled brewhouse, warm from the fire under a copper cauldron. The rules call for ora et labora prayer, and work frames your labor as a form of service, producing ale for monks and pilgrims. The bell tolls for terce, but you pause only briefly, stirring the mash with a wooden paddle. Monastic brewing is both practical and sacred. Historical records, like those from Weihenstephan's early charters, describe monasteries as brewing centers, their ale sustaining monks and guests while generating income. You grind malted barley, haul water from the well, and heat it in the cauldron, your arms aching from the effort. The rule allows ale in moderations, stronger for feast days, weaker for daily use, but demands precision to avoid waste. You add herbs like bog myrtle, following recipes passed down by older monks. The rule's discipline means errors like over-fermenting a batch could earn a rebuke or extra chores. Yet the work tests you, spills burn your hands, and the brewhouse's heat leaves you dizzy. Brothers take turns stoking the fire or carrying barrels, their small axe shared tool, a nod of approval easing the strain. These moments, unrecorded but vital, reflect the rule's call for mutual support. As you stir the cooling wort, the brewhouse's steam rising, you reflect on your role. Brewing ale sustains the monastery, but its demands are relentless. How does a monk find holiness in this sweaty, repetitive task? What toll does this labor, blending craft and discipline, take on body and spirit? In the brewhouse of Weihenstephan Abbey in 1120, your role as a monk brewing ale under the rule of Saint Benedict deepens, blending craft with devotion. By now, you've mastered the rhythm, rising for matins, chanting psalms, then tending the cauldron as dawn breaks. Historical records, like those from Bavarian monastic annals, highlight Weihenstephan's brewing prowess, its monks producing ale that sustained the community and pilgrims while funding the abbey's works. Your paddle stirs the mash, each motion a prayer under the rule's ora et labora. Your tasks are precise, yet grueling. You mill barley by hand, haul heavy buckets of water, and monitor the boil, adding hopsa, recent innovation for bitterness. The rule demands efficiency, as spoiled ale wastes resources, a serious fault in a monastery reliant on self-sufficiency. Chronicles, like those of Otto of Freising, describe monks refining recipes, their brews renown across medieval Europe. But the work strains you. Steam scalds your skin, your back aches from lifting vats, and fatigue clouds your focus during vespers. Lurks in the brewhouse. The rule permits ale, but drunkenness is a sin, and you've caught a brother sneaking an extra mug, earning a week of fasting. Historical accounts note monks disciplined for such lapses, their penances reinforcing the rules moderation. Yet community endures. A brother helps you strain wort, another shares a cooling cloth for your burns. These acts, unrecorded but essential, echo the rule's communal spirit, sustaining you through the heat and toil. Your ale shared at meals or with pilgrims. Wynandstephen's brewing techniques, preserved in medieval records, influenced modern beer production, its monks pioneers of craft brewing. As you check a fermenting barrel, the yeasty aroma sharp, you ponder this work's purpose. The rule sanctifies brewing as service, but its physical demands test your resolve. How does a monk find spiritual meaning in this sweaty craft? What happens when the grind of brewing, with its burns and burdens, and your work as a monk brewing ale under the rule of Saint Benedict, grows harder in the brewhouse's damp chill? The rule's ora et labora drives you to balance prayer with crafting ale, a lifeline for the monasteries, monks, and pilgrims. The cauldron steams under a low fire, its barley mash scent mingling with frost as you stir through aching arms. Historical records, like those from Wynandstephen's chronicles, praise the Abbey's brewers for producing ale that sustained communities and funded sacred works, their techniques shaping medieval brewing. Yet the cold stiffens your hands, and each task feels heavier under winter's weight. Your duties are unrelenting. You grind frozen barley, haul water from a half-iced well, and tend fermenting vats, ensuring the ale doesn't sour. The rule's precision means a mistake like underheating the mash could spoil a batch, earning penances like extra prayers or cleaning casks, as noted in monastic discipline records. Chronicles, such as those by Odilbert of Magdeburg, describe monks enduring such labors, their ale a staple for feast days and charity. But the toll is clear. Your fingers cracked from cold, exhaustion blurs your chance at compline, and you've seen brothers fall ill from the brewhouse's damp. Halting production. Community holds you steady. Brothers share the load-stoking fires, testing ales their small acts like a warm glove or a corrected recipe, easing your burden. These moments, unrecorded but vital, reflect Wynandstephen's history of collective effort, as noted in its annals. Yet, strange shows, a novice's spilled grain sparks tension, and you fight frustration, tempted to rush a batch. The rule's balance of discipline and charity guides you, as when you help a struggling brother stir the mash, your ale sustains. The monastery, its surplus, shared with the poor, a legacy that shaped brewing traditions still alive today. As you rest in the dormitory, the brewhouse's warmth fading, you reflect on this life. The boring grind of brewing, grinding grain, stirring vats. Modern brewing owes roots to this disciplined labor, but the cost is evident. You wonder about the monks worn down by this work, their bodies or spirits strained by burns and cold. What did they sacrifice? Health, rest, or quiet dreams to craft this ale? How did their silent, sweaty labor shape a world they'd never fully taste? Asterisk, monastic gardening, cultivating food and herbs. Asterisk, imagine yourself in the walled garden of a Cistercian monastery in the Loire Valley, perhaps the Abbey of Noirlac. In the year 1160, you are a monk tasked with tending the garden, a vital duty. Under the rule of Saint Benedict, which calls for self-sufficiency through manual labor, the air is fragrant with damp earth and blooming lavender, the soft clink of your hoe against soil blending with the distant bell for lauds. The rules, ora et labo, a prayer, and work frames your gardening as a sacred act, growing food and herbs to sustain the monastery. Your hands, rough from digging, grip the hoe as you break the soil for planting. Monastic gardens are lifelines, providing vegetables, fruits, and medicinal herbs. Historical records, like those from annals, describe gardens as central to Abbey life, their produce feeding monks and guests, while herbs treat ailments. You plant cabbages and leeks, water apple saplings, and tend rows of sage and chamomile, guided by texts like the Hortulus of Walafrid Strabo. The rule demands diligence, as a failed crop could mean hunger in winter. You work between the 8 daily offices, pausing to chant psalms, your habit streaked with dirt from kneeling in the soil. Your tasks are endless, weeding beds, pruning vines, or harvesting herbs for the infirmary, all under the sun's heat or spring's chill. The rule's discipline means carelessness, like neglecting a pestridin patch could earn a rebuke or extra labor. Chronicles note how monks maintained gardens with precision, their yields supporting the poor, as seen in Noirlac's records. Yet the work tests you, your back aches from hoeing, and aphids threaten your crops, demanding constant vigilance. You've seen novices struggle, their sloppy weeding corrected with added chores. Community binds this labor. Brothers share tools or help carry baskets of turnips. Their small AXA shared watering can, a nod of encouragement, teasing the strain. These moments, unrecorded but vital, reflect the rule's call for mutual support. As you pause to wipe sweat from your brow, the garden's green rows stretch before you, a testament to your toil. Gardening sustains the monastery, but its demands are relentless. How does a monk find holiness in this earthy, repetitive task? What toll does this labor, blending care and struggle, take on body and spirit? In the garden of Noirlac Abbey in 1160, your role as a monk cultivating food and herbs under the rule of Saint Benedict deepens. Your work a blend of devotion and survival. By now, you've settled into the rhythm, rising for matins, chanting psalms, then tending the garden at dawn, where the scent of thyme and wet soil fills the air. The rule's ora et labora sanctifies your labor as you hoe rows for beans or prune pear trees. Historical records, like those from Cistercian chronicles, highlight Noirlac's gardens as vital, producing food for monks and pilgrims while supplying herbs for healing, their methods shaping medieval agriculture. Your tasks are precise yet exhausting. You sow carrots, mulch herb beds with straw, and harvest fennel for the infirmary, guided by knowledge from older monks and texts like the Physica of Hildegard of Bingen. The rule demands care, as a neglected crop risks famine. A wilted herb bed could weaken the sick. Chronicles, such as those by Bernard of Clairvaux, describe monks perfecting cultivation, their gardens feeding communities and the poor. But the strain is real. Your hands blister from digging, summer heat drains you, and pests devour young shoots, testing your patience. You've seen brothers falter. Novice overlooks a weedy patch, facing penance like extra weeding. Temptation. creeps in. The rule forbids waste, but you've been tempted to skip a row to finish early, risking the abbot's rebuke. Historical accounts note monks disciplined for laziness, assigned solitary tasks, or fasting, as recorded in Cistercian annals. Yet, community endures. A brother helps you trap aphids, another shares a rare smile over a ripe apple. These acts, unrecorded but essential, echo the rule's communal spirit, sustaining you through toil. Your gardens yield cabbages for the refectory. Mint for fevers binds the monastery to its mission of charity. The garden's legacy is profound. Noirlac's cultivation techniques, preserved in medieval records, influenced modern farming and herbal medicine. As you water a row of leeks, the sun glinting off dewy leaves, you reflect on this work's purpose. The rule frames gardening as worship, but its physical demands test your resolve. How does a monk find spiritual meaning in this earthy craft? What happens when the grind of gardening, with its blisters and setbacks, threatens to dim the soul's devotion? Winter settles over Noirlac Abbey in 1160, and your work as a monk tending the garden under the rule of Saint Benedict grows harder in the frost-bitten soil. The rule's ora et labora drives you to balance prayer with cultivating food and herbs, a lifeline for the monastery's survival. You mulch turnip beds against the cold, harvest the last rosemary, and check stored apples, the air sharp with earth and ice. Historical records, like those from Noirlac's annals, praise Cistercian gardens for sustaining monks, pilgrims, and the poor, their methods shaping medieval horticulture. Yet, the cold numbs your fingers, and each task feels heavier under winter's grip. Your duties intensify with the season. You dig frozen soil for spring planting, repair trellises battered by wind, and dry herbs for the infirmary, ensuring no leaf is wasted. The rule demands precision neglecting. A crop could starve the community. A fault earning penances like extra labor or solitary prayer, as noted in monastic discipline records. Chronicles, like those of Alred of Revo, describe monks enduring such hardships, their gardens vital for food and medicine. But the toll is clear. Your hands crack from frost, fatigue clouds your chance at Compline, and you've seen brothers fall ill from the cold. Halting their work, community holds you steady. Brothers share the load, spreading compost, testing stored herbs, their small acts, like a warm scarf or a shared tool, easing your burden. These moments, unrecorded but vital, reflect Noirlac's history of collective effort, as noted in its records. Yet, strain shows a novice's careless pruning sparks tension, and you fight frustration, tempted to neglect a frozen bed. The rule's balance of discipline and charity guides you, as when you help a struggling brother save a frostbitten plant. Your garden sustains the monastery, its surplus feeding the needy, a legacy that shaped agricultural practices still studied. Today, as you rest in the dormitory, the garden's chill lingering, you reflect on this life. The boring grind of gardening, digging soil, battling pests, praying through cold-forged, a monastery that fed and healed a region. Modern farming owes roots to this disciplined labor, but the cost is evident. You wonder about the monks, worn down by this work, their bodies or spirits strained by frost and failure. What did they sacrifice, health, rest, or quiet dreams, to cultivate this garden? How did their silent, earthy labor shape a world they'd never fully reap? monastic charity, feeding the poor. Envision yourself at the gate of a Benedictine monastery in Kent, England, perhaps St. Augustine's Abbey in Canterbury. In the year 1190, you are a monk tasked with distributing alms to the poor, a sacred duty, under the rule of Saint Benedict, which commands charity to all as an expression of Christ's love. The air carries the scent of fresh-baked bread and damp stone. The gatehouse, bustling with ragged villagers, orphans, and laborers seeking food. The rules call for ora, etd, laboro prayer, and work frames your task as a holy service, feeding the hungry while maintaining monastic discipline. The bell tolls for prime, but you pause briefly, handing out loaves to trembling hands. Historical records, like those from Canterbury's archives, describe monasteries as vital lifelines, distributing surplus food to the poor, especially during lean times. You carry baskets of barley bread and pottage beans, and barley boiled thick from the kitchen, your arms straining under the weight. The rule requires you to serve humbly, offering food with a bow and a prayer, regardless of the recipient's status. Chronicles, such as those by Gervas of Canterbury, note how monks fed hundreds weekly, their alms sustaining communities. Yet, the crowd's desperation tests you. Some beg for more. Others push forward, and you struggle to maintain order. Your work is relentless, baking extra loaves, stirring vats of pottage, or cleaning the alms table between the 8 daily offices. The rule's discipline means errors like shorting a portion could earn a rebuke or extra prayers. You've seen novices falter, overwhelmed by the crowd's pleas, their mistakes corrected with added chores. The physical toll is real. Your hands burn from hot trays, and fatigue sets in during long days of service. Historical accounts mention monks facing such pressures, their charity a testament to faith, but a strain on body and spirit. Community binds this labor. Brothers take turns at the gate, sharing tasks like filling bowls or calming disputes. Small acts amongst extra loaf for a starving child, a shared prayer for a widow ease the burden. These moments, unrecorded but vital, reflect the rule's call for communal charity. As you distribute bread under the gatehouse's arch, the crowd's murmurs filling the air, you reflect on this role. Feeding the poor ties the monastery to the world, but its demands are heavy. How does a monk balance compassion with discipline in this chaotic service? What toll does this endless giving take on a cloistered soul? At St. Augustine's Abbey in 1190, your role as a monk distributing alms under the rule of Saint Benedict deepens. Your charity a bridge between the cloister and the needy outside its walls. By now, you're accustomed to the rhythm, rising for matins, chanting psalms, then heading to the gatehouse at dawn to feed the poor. The crowd grows, gaunt villagers, pilgrims, and beggars each clutching for bread or pottage, their voices a hum of desperation. Historical records, like those from Canterbury's monastic ledgers, highlight the Abbey's almsgiving as a lifeline, feeding hundreds and sustaining the region's poor, especially after harvests fail. Your hands, rough from handling coarse loaves, move quickly to serve all. Your tasks are demanding yet sacred. You haul heavy baskets of bread from the bakery, ladle pottage from steaming vats, and ensure fair portions. Guided by the rules, call for humility. Chronicles, like those by William of Canterbury, describe monks managing such charity with precision. their alms supporting both spiritual and economic life. But the work tests you. The crowds please overwhelm. Some snatch extra food, and maintaining order strains your patience. The rule forbids favoritism, but you've seen brothers slip an extra loaf to a familiar face, risking rebuke or penance like solitary prayer. As noted in monastic discipline records, the gatehouse exposes human need and your own limits. A widow's gratitude moves you, but a thief's grab for bread sparks frustration, tempting you to scold. Historical accounts, such as those by Benedict of Peterborough, note monks disciplined for losing temper or neglecting the poor, facing fasting or extra chores. Yet, community endures. A brother helps you carry a vat, another prays with a grieving beggar. These acts, unrecorded but essential, echo the rule's communal spirit, sustaining you through the chaos. Your charity, though exhausting, binds the monastery to its mission of mercy. The impact of this work is profound. Canterbury's almsgiving, as recorded in medieval annals, strengthened community ties and shaped early welfare systems, influencing modern charity. As you pour pottage under the gatehouse's shadow, the crowd's faces lit by hope, you ponder this role. The rule frames almsgiving as worship, but its emotional and physical demands weigh heavy. How does a monk maintain compassion amid relentless need? What happens when the strain of giving, with its chaos and fatigue, threatens to dull the heart's devotion? Winter blankets, St. Augustine's Abbey in 1190. And your task as a monk, feeding the poor under the rule of Saint Benedict, grows harder. In the biting cold, the rule's call for charity drives you to the gatehouse, where a shivering crowd widows, orphans, and frostbitten laborers waits for bread and pottage. The air smells of wood smoke and barley, the gatehouse a beacon of warmth amid snow. Historical records, like those from Canterbury's Chronicles, praise the Abbey's almsgiving for sustaining the poor during harsh winters, its charity a cornerstone of medieval society. Yet the toll is heavy, your hands crack from cold, and fatigue clouds your prayers. At Compline, your duties intensify with the season. You bake extra loaves, stir pottage over a smoky fire, and ration dwindling supplies, ensuring no one is turned away. The rule demands fairness, but the crowd's desperation some pleading, others shoving tests your resolve. Chronicles, like those by Eadmer, describe monks enduring such pressures, their alms feeding hundreds while maintaining order. Mistakes, like uneven portions, risk penances like fasting or solitary work. As noted in monastic records, you've seen brothers, struggler, novice, overwhelmed by demands, another ill from exposure halting their service. Your own body aches from hauling baskets in the snow. Community holds you steady. Brothers share the load carrying firewood, serving bowls their small axe, like a warm cloth or a shared prayer, easing your burden. These moments, unrecorded but vital, reflect Canterbury's history of collective charity, as noted in its annals. Yet, strange shows, a monk snaps at a greedy beggar, risking rebuke, and you fight your own frustration, tempted to hurry the line. The rule's balance of discipline and mercy guides you, as when you give an extra scoop to a starving child. Your almsgiving sustains the Abbey's mission, its surplus feeding the needy and shaping a legacy of care. As you rest in the dormitory, the gatehouse's clamor lingering, you reflect on this life, the boring grind of charity, baking, serving, praying through cold-forged, a monastery that fed a region and inspired modern welfare. But the cost is clear. You wonder about the monks worn down by this service, their spirits frayed by endless need. What did they sacrifice? Health, peace, or quiet dreams to feed the poor? How did their silent, tireless charity shape a world they'd never fully share?